Board of Education meeting, January 28th, 2019. Is that better? Okay, great. Officially the most packed board meeting I've ever been at.
Thank you. Why?
Yeah. So I know that so traditionally what we do is have public comment pretty early. We want to take a few minutes before public comment to just go through about a 10-minute presentation on the budget. Before we do that, I know there's a couple people here who really want to say some comments, but they've got to go back to rehearsal like right now. And so can I heard it was maybe 2 people. Is that accurate? 2. Okay, great. So we will take things in a slightly larger than normal board meeting. We will take things maybe slightly out of order and allow 2 of you to speak briefly. And this is for everyone. You have 3 minutes to speak at a board meeting. If everyone here chose to speak for 3 minutes, it would be well past midnight. So we'd ask that you share comments when we do get to public comment as quickly and briefly as possible. If someone said something you've said already, and if the board has actually potentially even addressed something that's on your mind, feel free to send an email. Feel free to communicate in other ways. If we had everyone here communicating, it would be a very long night. But your presence alone speaks volumes, so I just want to acknowledge that. So with that, why don't I hand it over to these 2 students for public comment.
Thank you. Hastings Music Program has shaped my identity for the past 9.5 years. My name is Ruby Pachillo, and I'm a senior this year. And I sang with Mr. Hartshorn, started playing saxophone with Mr. Rubino, and continued studying voice with Mr. Kernis, and later Mr. Riss. I was a part of Mr. Carini's recording technology class for 2 years. I've studied music theory, jazz, and band, orchestra, and pep band music with Mr. Jernigan. Many students in Hastings have the opportunity to take private lessons, but I have never had that good fortune. However, I am a 2-time All-State vocal jazz singer and scat soloist. I run the high school's open mic. I teach 3 voice students and 1 saxophonist, and I am planning to pursue jazz studies as part of my double major in college. And that is all because of the music program here. For any student who comes along after Mr. Jernigan, For any student who comes along after Mr. Jernigan leaves, it would be tragic for those opportunities to simply not exist. I am who I am because of this program. Mr. Jernigan heads up 8 groups, and I doubt that anyone outside of the music program can even begin to imagine the hours and expertise that that takes. The teachers the Board of Ed is planning to assign to fill his roles are already doing incredible and very demanding work. And that's why we need to put every penny we can into bringing someone, or 2 people, or 3, who will be willing to put the same heart into the job. The music department is a part of our town's identity. It's the arts, not the athletics, that we're in the news for time and time again, and it's why people move here and fund our schools in the first place. We consistently produce not only phenomenal students, but also phenomenal musicians, and as I'm sure you all know, studies have shown that excellence in both is quite linked. Hastings Music even affects our award-winning theater department, which relies heavily on our student musicians to perform in the cast and in the pit. I'm all dressed up because I just ran here from a rehearsal for our groundbreaking Hairspray production. And I've seen a lot of the Hastings music culture fade since I came to the high school. There is one silver lining in Jernigan's decision to leave, and that's that now is our time to rebuild. Think about all the prestige the music program has brought us. If everything Jernigan has given to Hastings disappears just because he's heading off, so much of what makes Hastings this incredible blue ribbon school is bound to go with him. Thank you.
Very well done. I also don't normally wear this. This is my costume. My name is Evangeline May, and I'm a senior. And the music program has probably been definitely been the most influential department in my school career. There's only so much that you can do with academic classes, but with music there is so much more. I've been involved with chorus, madrigals, orchestra, and sinfonia, and it has taught me more than any other experience in my life. I cannot stress enough how music groups have changed my life. Some days, the things that helps me get out of bed in the morning and get through the academic day where I'm overloaded with stress and work is the opportunity to make music. Some of the closest friends that I've made from singing or playing the viola. As an 8th grader, I was pulled up to high school orchestra. That was only possible because Mr. Jernigan believed in me. He pushed me out of my comfort zone and helped me become the musician that I am today. Sinfonia offers students an experience like no other school. Every time we go to competition, the judges make a point to ask us if we realize how special this is. I have never really understood the depth of that question until now. Having a conductorless chamber ensemble that involves people from grades 7 through 12 is so unique. Without music, Hastings is just like any other school in the district, monotone. My parents would not have moved here if there wasn't music. Taking these opportunities away wouldn't just be unfortunate, it would probably be the biggest mistake in the history of the school.
Okay. So, thank you.
Can I just say something, Doug? Can you hear? I just want to thank both of you. I work at a college, and it is always the students who I can depend on to make the most compelling case. I know probably everyone in here has something to say, and I think you guys said it. Thank you.
And I also just want to say that looking out at this room, like Doug said, I've never seen a board meeting with this many people. And, you know, I have a big smile on my face because to me this is democracy, and this is why I moved to this town. So I just want to say that I'm grateful for all of you knowing that you can bring your voices here and know that you'll be heard.
So I just want to address a slightly less sexy topic, but critically important right now, which is the budgeting process, which is how we all ended up in this room right now. And what we want to do right now is very quickly go through. So where are we in the budgeting process? How does the budgeting process work? It works by, we've got what's called a rollover budget. We've got last year's budget and we roll that over. And once we have that budget, we look at it and we say, what do we want to change? What do we need to add, subtract, who's retiring? And that's a process that we go through every year. We are very early in that process right now. There are very early set of proposals that came out. Not exactly sure what happened this time, but somehow something in a very early stage conversation got out. And in many ways, I think that's great. Because what it did was it somehow woke up a conversation that's probably been at the forefront of a lot of your minds, and in the back of your minds is something you just took for granted. And at some point, someone jarred something in you over the last week, and you said, I can't take this for granted, and I want to come out and I want to say something now. But I can't stress enough that we're in a really early stage of the budget planning process. You are a strong voice in that process, strongest that we've had since I've been here. So with that, what I want to do is really go back to the process part of where we are. I'm going to pass the meeting over to Maureen Caraballo and Dr. Wilson to walk us through our very early budget planning process. The board is then just going to have probably a quick 5-minute conversation about some of the things presented. Then we're going to kick it back over to the community for public comment. Okay?
And just one more thing before Maureen starts. Doug, you mentioned about something that got out. The first place this was discussed was at a Finance Committee meeting last week where we didn't really discuss. We just heard that this was a proposal, but I just wanted to let you know that this also is discussed at Finance Committee meetings, which are fully open to the public, and we invite you to attend.
So while Patrick is queuing up the presentation, like Doug said, the way the process is each year is we have a rollover budget, and that gives us a certain increase to the budget. And then a part of our budgeting process is all the building administrators and chair people and people in that building will come with a set of proposals of things that either they believe they need. Some are driven by enrollments, some are driven by different programming needs. And we get that list and we look to see what either can be, we try to fund it or make roll that into what we have available in our budget. So the last couple years, last year we did add a significant amount of new staff. When I say significant, some positions that had not existed in the district before, in the mental health, and I know Gail had mentioned earlier the literacy specialists and different things that we were really lacking in, and we needed to beef up some of that staff, including the math coach and some of those in particular last year. This year, when we first did our budget, we received $1.7 million worth of additional budget proposals. We really only had about under the tax cap limit at that point after our rollover budget, which includes staff increases to health insurance, and different expenses such as that go up, like everybody's expenses go up each year. That left us we could not afford to add all those additional budget increases to the budget. So what we did is we met a number of times, and we were meeting in the finance committee, and those two numbers didn't add up. So basically what we needed to do is go back to building leaders and say, in order to fund some of these, if they're really necessary, we're going to have to find ways to either cut, and we're schools, so the majority of things are staffing increases. And I'm going to walk through some of those, and where we kind of ended up was we ended up getting that number down to about $900,000. But again, the $900,000, we needed to find ways to make savings to pay for that additional staff, because I think, as you can imagine, we can't just continue to add millions of dollars of new staffing in addition to increases. We have, in the last few years, seen some increases of enrollment at Hillside. So again, all of these factors rolled together made us, we started off with a very limited amount of funds to address many, many needs across the board. So let's just walk through those tonight. So this is just our budget calendar, just in terms of, like Doug said, we're very early on in the budget process, and the reason we started having these conversations as early as we did this year was for this very reason. There were many requests that need to be addressed, and there was only a certain amount of dollars to fund them. We knew that in order to fund those, there were going to be some proposed cuts in some of the programming. The goals of the Finance Committee are we're three, and they've been fairly consistent every year. We try to have a levy that stays under the tax cap limit, and we try to attempt to build an affordable and sustainable organization, and we're also attempting to maintain a reasonable level of reserves. So this right here reflects more or less a rollover budget for us, and as you can see, our budget to budget was only increasing $606,000, but because we are needing our amount of reserves that we've been kind of living off for the last few years are dwindling, and the ability to continue to do that, and that's where sometimes you'll hear of districts having $5 million holes too. That's because there's a time that you only have X amount of dollars to raise in taxes, and your expenses are exceeding that. So if you see here, our rollover budget was only a $600,000 increase, or a 1.2% budget change, but our tax levy that we needed to support that increase was $1.5 million. So again, this is tax cap compliant. It keeps us under the limit, but this is kind of our starting place, so where our rollover budget puts us. This is just the calculation. A lot of people may have heard the jargon tax cap calculation. It was something that Governor Cuomo put in to kind of help keep districts to keep taxes in check. So there's a calculation we have each year. Basically, in this calculation, under the legal limit, we're allowed to increase to standard the tax cap for this upcoming budget, $1.7 million. Currently, we're at 1.5. So again, we only had about $200,000 worth of money based to add new staffing and keep everything that we currently have. Some of the budget factors on our rollover, we of course have contractual staff increases. We did have 4 retirement savings we were able to roll into there. We did have a health insurance increase of 7%, and you'll see that that was about $400,000 for us. And again, I just showed you we don't have a lot of extra dollars to increase, but that's factored in already. And then there were some decreases that helped save us money. One in particular, in the teacher's retirement rate went down, which saved us about $300,000. And we did have a reduction out of district busing runs, which were just a matter of we were able to reorganize some of those runs this year. We do have an increase in interest revenue that we're anticipating for next year, and we're also anticipating additional special ed out of district tuition placements into our district. This reserve fund, and I could spend probably 2 hours on it, but I won't bore people here. What I spoke about before is that we are now in a period where we've been cutting into our reserves. Typically, we've had historically about 10 million over the last 10 years, more or less, year to year. If you can see now over the last couple of years, and it's fine, we are slowly decreasing the amounts in those reserves, which is fine. We don't need to keep a tremendous amount of money. But if you can kind of see the trend, we're going down. And eventually, if we keep pulling money out to balance our budgets, there is no money left there. And this is really our savings account. And you do need to have, every district, for the most part, has money in the bank for the emergency repairs and things such as that. So as an example, although we are proposing a bond, without having some money in the capital reserve, anything that could happen to our buildings outside of the bond, if it gets passed, we need to have some money on hand, because there, in buildings such as this, you could have a repair that could exceed $500,000 easily. So again, we are continuing to go down. This is something that the board, we've been spending a lot of time speaking about it this year, because we're not able to add back to our reserves as we have been in the past, as the dollars are getting tighter. The concern is the trend will continue to go down, even with what we're showing. So every year, we will have revenue losses that we'll have to make up in our tax cap calculation. Okay, so these are some, but this is where we ended up in the budget proposals. I mentioned earlier we had about $1.7 million. These are now scaled down to about 900 and change. The first one we're looking at tonight that is still being, is still in consideration to be added to the budget. One of the main goals of Hillside, they feel that they're really lacking in having any type of support in the area of math for children. They have reading specialists, but in terms of their RTI model, they have no one dedicated to support math. The original proposal for this was similar to what we have at the middle school, was for a math coach or a teacher in the area of math. And the proposal was for about $150,000 to $175,000 support this area, and it would support all children K-4. Again, going back and forth with the money, this is and there were other items also, many other items that are now gone. It was a few $100,000 of additional proposals, but what you see now is what they feel that they can try to manage next year with, which is having a teacher assistant who would be the person to give first level support at Hillside, working and would be pushing into classes to help. We also are going to invest in some AIS math support for our teachers to and the teacher assistant that will be doing this work. And there's also just a small amount of money allocated for an immigration project that they would like to do. At the middle school, this even has been scaled back from yesterday, when the last time the board had seen it, because there was a consideration to add additional literacy specialists in the middle school. It was a request that just recently got pulled off the table. It had started, there was that. There was an additional request for a guidance counselor. There was a request, which is on a different part of the budget, to have more support in the foreign language classrooms for our children who have IEPs, and you'll see that on the later slide. So again, there was a much larger request from the middle school. This is the scaled down request, which is about $15,000. At the high school, again, they're looking for some additional literacy staffing. It's needed, it's required. This started out as a 1.0, and again, this is also went down from yesterday to today. They're trying to tighten up the staff, and they had hoped to give some additional support to some, but this again is a very scaled down version of what was requested, but they're still feel that they need some additional support there at the high school for literacy staffing to service children with that need. There's also just some dollars here for some literacy, PD and such. And then if you notice, the big ticket item here is there's a real need. This year we really tried to scale back, and we attempted to pull back the E&L staffing, or we tightened it up quite a bit. What we have found is actually we just had to increase one of our teachers because we have some new students, and that's always changing. And again, with just some of our students, they need this additional support, and we need to hire a 0.6 E&L staff member next year for the high school. There's also money for the Challenge Success PD that the high school started this year. Now, this is the area that's really driving a lot of the budget increase for next year. And again, these are just based upon numbers. Our numbers we're fairly high this year, and we'll have some charts to kind of show what this looks like. But right now, there is I think it's beyond proposal. The board, the finance committee, we've gone through kind of some of the information that has been provided to us, and it seems fairly clear, unless anything changes, that there is a need to add 3 ICT classrooms at Hillside, 3 additional staff members. There's a need to, we've been talking about, we are adding a communications class back to Hillside next year. Again, we have children that are in need of that class and will be coming into the school. That also, a communications class is 812 staffing, so that means 1 teacher and a teacher aide and a teacher assistant, and you'll see those staff members reflected here. There's also a child that is going to need a one-to-one aide. And the pilot program for 5th, 6th grade world language, currently there is no additional support for children with IEPs in foreign language, and it's very difficult for these kids when they have the support in other classes. This again is a very scaled down version of what was originally requested. So we're hoping, even if we start with a 0.5, if we're able to find somebody to do that, that'll be a really important addition, and that may grow. So again, this is again a scale down of where we ended up in the area of special ed. So we'll see that 735,000 of new staffing. These are just some ICT numbers that I'm not going to go through the charts, but basically most districts use somewhere in the 60-40 ratio in classrooms. When you're a small district, a few children either way will tip those ratios. Again, this is our current staffing. And then, this will be up on the website if people are interested. And it just kind of shows where some of the, where we're adding, projecting to add some of those sections. There is maybe one of those sections that we are planning for, but it may not be necessary to add another teacher. But again, it's so early on. We're in January. It's so difficult creating a budget for the following September and throughout the school year. So we feel it's best to plan for that, the sections as you had seen on the earlier slide. Okay, this is another budget proposal. This is something that we had talked about last year. We were able to, our staff member tonight is going to be giving a presentation, Janice Mateo Toledo. She is currently a full-time teacher. She does have 0.2 release time, and she is our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. She's a teacher on assignment. There's so much work in that area that, that is needed, and this was a request, again, it was requested to be a full-time position this year. In looking at our budget and trying to find a way, this would allow Janice to have an additional 0.4 release time in order to do this work, in order for her to work across the buildings, because currently the 0.2 is really just not much time for her to do what you would like to get accomplished there. Okay, so now we're talking about some of the areas that people show up for tonight. So there were areas, again, as we talked about adding things, there's some areas that came up. I mean, obviously music never came up until, Mr. Jernigan said he was going to retire. And then, again, very tough situation because something had to be recommended for cuts. And I can tell you that this is kind of where we're at. Again, like Doug and the board have time to, we do have some money under the tax cap. We can look for other reductions elsewhere. This is kind of where we, when I say we, the administrators and with Dr. Wilson, what the recommendations were. And I can tell you this is months and months, and it was not done easily. And everything that we looked at, we looked at class sizes at Hillside. I mean, we have to find reductions somewhere. So right now, this was something that discussed with the finance committee, because I think the principals and everything was really grappling with what to cut, and I'll just show you some of the rationale. And I think, although they knew it would be a reduction, they felt as though, in terms of the flexibility in the schedule, what they thought that would be the reduction, and you can see some of what the reasoning was. We also, in this budget, are recommending the FLES be cut from Hillside, and we'll go into that. And that really,
Maureen, just want people to know, FLES means the Spanish. It means foreign language in elementary school. So that FLES means the Spanish program at Hillside.
We're also, right, and we're also looking to, and again, this is something that as long as I've been here, we're looking to reduce the kindergarten aides out of the kindergarten classrooms, or either share them or provide, currently they're 7 hours a day in the classroom. It would be more a few hours a day. Again, that's also going to be a significant thing that it's going to be, with the little ones, a very big change from what has been there if it goes ahead. We do have a resource room at Hillside. Again, this was something that, just on the numbers, they really would love to keep it, but they're with all the other needs, they're scheduling that to be not offered next year. We are looking to scale back. We have technology support, people who fix things for us in the district. We currently have 2.5 people who do that. We're looking to reduce that to 1.5 people. I can tell you it's gonna cause some issues. I mean, I know these are things people don't know about, but we have a lot of technology in the district, and if something isn't working, it's going to be significant. We also have a staff trainer who comes from BOCES here who helps teachers with any type of technology, software and things, and again, we're looking to eliminate doing that. We're also looking, and this number could possibly get larger, to eliminate teacher assistants that are currently supporting special ed classrooms. Now, what this would do is, we currently have 11 teacher assistants. This would be reducing 4, so the idea would be they would be shared across classrooms. So that comes up with our $965,000 worth of cuts. The music at Hillside, again, this is just based upon what some of the, when they looked at if there was a way to either, not backfill that position. The current staffing, again, and this is based on what the principals gave me, and I'm not sure if all the numbers are accurate, because I think music is a little bit different than other classes. It's hard to kind of get into the schedule and really understand how the lessons and things work. But currently, it looks as though that Hillside has 2.2 to 2.3 FTEs based on a 200, because music teachers teach 220 minutes a day, that contractually. K to 4, currently under that staffing ratio, gets music 2 times and 44 minutes each in a 6-day cycle. And then there is about a 0.2 or 0.3 of instructional music, which totals about 6 to 8 hours a week of other staff that comes up. So again, when they made this recommendation, and I think, just to clarify, at least as far as Hillside is concerned, it would not reduce it to once a cycle, because you would only be losing either a 0.2 or 0.3 teacher, but it would result in some reduction of general music. Not knowing exactly how that looks in the cycle, but it would more than likely be that you'd have one 44-minute class and one smaller class, or some grade levels may get a little bit more, a little bit less. So again, that was when Hillside was, and again, they had to look at it across the board, that was, they would feel that they could give up a 0.3 to send back to the high school. Again, this is to do with actual classes, and then everything else is music lessons. So again, this is all current staffing levels, and everything else is kind of in lessons and independent study, which we understand that it is extremely important to people. But if you can kind of see the rationale, everyone felt as though if they tightened up music at building every 0.2 or 0.3 and tighten up some of the lessons, I don't personally know how all that schedule works. I've seen some of it, but the principals felt as though there would be no cut in the actual programming. It would be a cut in, or it'd be a tightening of independent study, a little bit less minutes at Hillside, and then a tightening up of lessons here, because each building would probably absorb about a 0.2 or 0.3 of that reduction. Now, FLES, I just wanted to highlight this. So FLES, with the current offering of FLES, is the kindergarten gets it once every 6 days for 30 minutes. The first grade gets it once every 6 days for 40 minutes. The second through fourth grade get it twice on a 6-day cycle for 30 minutes. With this is not ideal to begin with, because for years they had 2 full-time teachers with 25 sections. Now they're doing 30 sections. In addition, now that they have no classroom, with the push-in model, their contact time with students is even significantly lower than these minutes, because that's what they're scheduled for. But by the time the teachers are able to get in, get to the smartboard and things, I've heard where she's running from classroom to classroom, sometimes it's 25 minutes. So again, the recommendation here was twofold. We have, funding, we having some budgetary issues. It's to eliminate the FLES for 19-20 school year, to be reevaluated when hopefully space and additional funding can be appropriated to properly support the program. In speaking to the chairperson of this department, her recommendation, which is Ms. Bertacci, she said that honestly, unless the board was going to bolster the staffing there, that it really is, it's not a foreign language, it's an enrichment.
Not
we
a
can.
what? I'm sorry, it's not a what?
It's an enrichment program.
And this can be for a follow-up discussion when we have the meet. I had a follow-up discussion with her, and there's a creative solution.
Okay.
Or a creative something to think about that may be able to save that.
Right, but I'm saying, right, no, and I get that, but I think, I mean, that may be fine, but I think, and again, the board can give us another direction, but as we know, and we've talked about in Finance Committee quite a bit, if these cuts are not realized, which is fine, we'll go back to buildings, but it will be then class. I mean, there are not a lot of different items, and especially the principals cutting back some of the reading support. I think there's got to be, a point that if we're going to revisit those things, then maybe some people want to revisit increasing their staff too. So this is where we net out here. The net of these proposals, if you see all the additions that came through, was over $1 million of new proposals. Reductions are showing, or approximately $965,000. So that would, there's about $39,000 that we would have to increase the budget. I think, and I think before I showed you that there's about $200,000 still available under the cap. So this would eat up about $40,000 of that, and then there'd be another about $150,000 more that either we could restore FLES, you could restore, I mean, there's things you could do, but just also to consider, these are some of the items that are not included in this budget proposal. We have a very large section of third grade currently at Hillside. There is not funds allocated in this budget to split that section. So again, if we, whatever the board decides in terms of if they want to go up to the tax cap limit, that's something they can tell us, and we'll work to come up with what, what that could mean in terms of, whatever direction they want us to go into. But there is not a tremendous amount of room. So if this were to be, this would be something that we don't currently then have room to fund without potentially, especially if we're thinking of not making other reductions. These are some of the other reductions. They're fairly generic. Like we had spoken about last year, we talked about cutting assistant coaches. That would be, even if we cut them, I think, across the board for every sport, it would be about like $75,000 or so you would save. Schedule B, we've looked at that. I mean, if you were to cut it, again, you may be able to cut $20,000, $30,000, but there's many clubs and a lot of the theater that that would also impact possibly. Teacher assistants, that's one I just want to not speak for the principals, but speak for them. That was something that they felt like a further reduction in any type of support staff they're worried, like in terms of the impacts on the classroom. We could look at reducing additional staff and programs at any of the buildings, and class sizes are always something if we were to, these are things we can look at, and then office support staff. And that's about it. So I guess, the board, because there's so many moving pieces of things that they need to consider to add this year, and we just wanted to make sure that they give us some direction in terms of where they're comfortable in terms of the tax cap, and they can give us direction on that, and then that'll help us, understand where the budget will end up.
So I just want to thank Maureen. She's worked very, very hard on this budget, as you can tell. And, clearly that the school and community value music and the arts very strongly, and they have a proud program. And I do think that there should be consideration given, and Maureen, I think most people around the table agree to find a way to save not to save any, really, it was something that just came up in discussion with respect to a retiree, albeit quite an extraordinary teacher by all accounts. The fact is, notwithstanding, he is going, and the thought was simply that, if we sort of reorganize things in the way that the teachers are assigned, there'd be a way to do that, and without the replacement cost, it would be a big savings. After all, the teacher is going, so the teacher is not going to be hurt by this. But clearly, you don't want to do that and damage what is a great program, and which people, once again, as confirmed tonight, is such an important thing. However, on the other hand, it was also mentioned, as you heard Maureen mention, that in the last couple of years, certainly last year and definitely in this year, we're headed in a direction of spending more money than we really should, because there's a tendency now lately to borrow from the fund balance. And as stated before, that's like taking money out of the bank to pay your bills all the time. That doesn't last you very long. We've seen that has led to ruination for some school districts. So the fact is, the district needs to look at savings. Now, if they're not going to get it by not replacing the retiring teacher, they have to look at some of this long list that you've just seen. And the truth be told, and my hat's off to the principals, for example, that came up with a number of areas that they were able to scale back, and they've actually offered up and said, no, you can cut this. No, if you want, you can take that, and so on and so forth. And frankly, I think that's very true. But if you're going to go that route, it's going to demand that the people on the board and the public understand that we're just not going to be able to be spending for this, that, and the other. There has to be some reduction. There has to be some scaling back, and it's all feasible. And you can still save the music program in whole. Let's be clear about that. But you just can't say, let's write another check. Let's take some more money out of the fund balance. Doesn't work. Will lead to disaster. So what I'm suggesting to you simply is, and by the way, when you looked at the calendar, what did you see? The budget's not even due until April. There's going to be a lot of conversations. I don't know if you guys are all going to come back every time we have a meeting, but there's going to be a lot of meetings. And, maybe you should. Maybe you should keep an eye on things in terms of, well, don't cut this program, don't cut it. The problem is everybody says, don't cut this, don't cut that. Uh-oh, what do we do? Because we either take money out of the bank we can ill afford, or we end up, we're going to revisit music. It wouldn't be my recommendation. But I think the board has a lot of choices here, and I would give them your full support to help them to make good choices. And I also am pleased to see such an interest. And I have to say here, people here are very polite, very civil. Even though I know you're not happy with this conversation, you've all been quite good about it, so we thank you for that as well. However, this can be figured out, but it's going to take some time, and I think some effort on the part of the board.
Well, let me ask the board right now. Do you want to have a conversation about some of these items right now, or do you want to pass it over to public comment?
I'd like to pass it over to public comment. I think before we decide we need to hear. And I also think we have so many people, and we did promise an early public comment.
Okay. Agree.
Okay. So we're going to open up to public comment. We will be really strict about 3 minutes. So if you get the signal, please be respectful of everyone in the room. And if you have less than 3 minutes, that's certainly welcome. If you hear someone say exactly what you were thinking and they're extremely just as articulate as you would be, feel free to pass the mic. And with that, we will kick things off.
Can I say one thing before we slide to public comment? I just, so as to not kind of, and I appreciate everyone's recognize that people are here to talk specifically about the music department. We all understand that. I appreciate everyone's time spending the last 20 minutes going through the budget proposal. My ask is that you collectively as a community think about how to how we work together to make long-term sustainable, how to fund a long-term sustainable best in the area district. And that's going to be a communication, a conversation that I'm very pleased for all sorts of different reasons, the number of people that are here, because I think, in the years that I've been in the district, the last decade and the last couple of years on the board, the covers haven't ever been pulled back this clear as to what it takes to work together to make tough decisions, because our tax base is fixed. We can't go to you and say we would like 4% in taxes, 5% in taxes, 6% in taxes, right? We're making difficult decisions. Everyone's going to speak, or those that want to speak are going to speak, but your presence is already clearly communicating the commitment that the community has to music. That's going to solve itself, I'm pretty sure. But broadly speaking, the tensions that exist in terms of making a budget that works for every single constituent, that tension's not going to go away, and we're going to need to work together to get to the best possible resolution, both in this budget year for 1920 and then in the 2021 budget year in 21-22. It's going to be an ongoing process. So I just want to say that so we don't lose the reason we've asked you to go through this budget presentation, even though it's not really what you're here for, what you want to talk about. I just want to say that, and let's move to public comment. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bibi Seidenberg. I'm the orchestra concertmaster and a part of Symphonia, which is the 7th through 12th grade advanced orchestra. And the following is a statement from the high school band and orchestra to the Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education. As Mr. Jernigan, our beloved music teacher, moves on to the next chapter of his life, we would like to ensure that the uniquely strong music department that he helped to create remains successful and supported. Through his years in the Hastings-on-Hudson school system, Mr. Jernigan has taken on an incredible number of roles within the music department. Many students find themselves starting the day with Mr. Jernigan at 7 a.m. for early morning rehearsals and waving him goodnight at 9 p.m. after jazz band. The ensembles which he leads are among those which have won many awards, including gold ratings and first place awards at the World Strides On Stage Heritage Festival. Because of his devotion, the Hastings Music Department has helped to distinguish the Hastings school system from those around it and helped hundreds of students to find and develop a passion for music to express themselves. Beyond the musical talent that the music programs at Hastings provide, we also raise thousands of dollars each year to help compensate for the costs associated with the national music competition that Hastings competes in.
Hi, I'm Daniel Goldberg. I'm speaking with Phoebe. I'm the president of the high school band, so we work together on this. And we wish for Mr. Jernigan's legacy to continue on by ensuring proper staffing towards the programs which he currently runs, and making sure that all of the programs continue to run after he departs. The current proposed plan to reallocate positions of staff members already within the school system would strain the staff and greatly lessen the quality of work that the music department has accomplished over the years. Mr. Jernigan's position comes with unique challenges that require a new staff member to be hired to ensure the preservation of legacy our school district has earned largely as a result of our music program. He has taken on an incredible number of responsibilities that represent the work of a full-time position, not additions to positions of others. We wish that with every decision you make regarding the music department at Hastings, you consider the benefits that future students will be able to have if the departments are continued properly, and that Hastings could lose a lot if you don't support all of these little things. Mr. Jernigan does the work that could be of 3 people, and he really can't be spread out between a lot of people. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Rubino. I'm the chairman of the music department here. Thanks to all the kids who spoke. They couldn't have said it better. And I just want to add to what they say and say that, you know, this isn't just a high school position we're talking about. This is a program from our most advanced 12th grade violinist all the way down to our youngest kindergartner. And the slides are very scary. So I just wanted to mention that, you know, this kind of cut in our staffing would have a big effect on everyone in the schools, and so it's not just the high school kids. And I just wanted to be here to represent my department, but I'm also getting this like really nostalgic feeling right now. And when I was hired 28 years ago, on the same day that Ken was hired, my middle school principal called me in, and the first conversation we had, as she sat me down, she said, "Your first assignment is to get to know this community, because when you do, you're going to understand why it's imperative for you to work hard and succeed here." And she was talking about this right here. And I had unfortunately thought that this went away for so many reasons. But to see you all here tonight and to have this kind of support for something that's would be a real problem for us if we had to endure. And I would just suggest to the board, but one way I get my stress out is by knowing I'm living my values. And if I place a high value on something, I know I'm doing okay. So hopefully that helps with the stress when you have to make these decisions. If you just prioritize your values, and it seems like we value music here, so I appreciate your time.
I'm Noah Brody, current high school senior. Every Monday and Wednesday since my freshman year, I've gotten up at 6:15 a.m. to go to early morning band with Mr. Jernigan. In that time, I've gone from being a subpar triangle player to the section leader of the drum section. True. I also play in the school's jazz band and help with the orchestra and steel drums ensemble when needed. In short, I am or have been a part of most of the school's ensembles in one way or another. I'm not saying this to brag, I'm trying to show how important music has been to me for the past 3.5 years I've been here. So much so that at times I've gotten up at 6:15 every day in a week for music, which is a lot for a teenager. These experiences with Mr. Jernigan's ensembles have provided me with the lessons that I would never have learned otherwise. I've never played sports, I can barely throw a ball well, let alone catch one, so I've learned much of what I know about leadership and teamwork from the time spent in these groups. I've had to help organize a section for a national competition, I've had to ask enough of my section members to help me out with orchestra, even bring in someone who's never played percussion before. Where was I? Even the mistakes I've made help me. I've loved every drum I've almost dropped, every time I've gotten lost during a band song, every time I've lost my actual music, because they've made me me. Mr. Jernigan's ensembles have provided me, and every other member, with unforgettable experiences that will stick with us for the rest of our lives. I acknowledge that, as a current senior, these changes won't affect me at all. But I know juniors, sophomores, freshmen, middle schoolers, even elementary schoolers, who wouldn't be able to enjoy the benefits of the same rich musical education that I have received. And these groups also give a great sense of accomplishment to their members. Whenever we finish a concert, to rounds of applause, or play to judges at competitions, I know that I worked hard to create something beautiful. I also, however, know that finding a replacement for Mr. Jernigan will be difficult, and I'm not even pretending to know how to balance a budget. But in cutting down Hastings' music department, I know for a fact that we would be ending what made Hastings such a special place to grow up for me and many, many others. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pauline, and I'm on the Music Booster Club for Hastings. Please sign up on your way out tonight. There's a form. I just want to talk a little bit about my biggest concern about what you discussed tonight, which is the idea of eliminating Mr. Jernigan's position and reallocating the current faculty to take on his responsibilities. It kind of completely changes the DNA of the music department and the scope. One of our board members the other night was talking about how when you plant fruit trees, it takes like 4 or 5 years before they actually produce fruit. And the way that the music department's structured right now, the beauty of it really is that the young children from a very early age start with their triangles, they start with Twinkle Twinkle, they're getting instruction by 3rd grade and 4th grade, Mr. Rubino's down there, everyone's sort of sharing, building up the pipeline so that when they enter the middle school, because they're getting instruction from a really early age and some sort of fundamental principles are being put in place, they can actually start playing instruments. And then you have this kind of rocky section of middle school where we all come and support them and kind of it's okay, the music. But when it gets to high school, the deliverables are, tremendous. And we have students who are reaching a level of musical ability that there is absolutely no way they wouldn't be able to reach it if they weren't learning Twinkle Twinkle in kindergarten. And so they're able to sight read, they're able to proficiently put together music of a caliber that you just can't find in a school district around here. So I think that's really, really important, is it's a pipeline. And if you remove teachers from the bottom of that pipeline and think they can fill gaps in high school and take them out of the middle school, what you're doing is watering down that whole process, and you cannot expect to see the caliber at the high school level that we've got right now. So that brings me to the next big question, is that students learn from teachers who love what they do and also from teachers who they love. So I would like to ask, how can we set up his replacement for success? And we have Mr. Jernigan on staff right now. He's got the secret sauce. He knows what the key factors are that the next candidate would require, and I think it would be a timely decision. I know your budget's not ready for months, but a timely decision on this particular matter enables us to set the next person up for tremendous success, because we don't want to sabotage that by losing the secret sauce holder right now. And they know how they're doing it, and we want to be able to set that up to pass on. So there's some things to think about.
Hi, my name is Anya. I'm a senior here, and I've been a part of chorus and selective choruses since I was in 3rd grade. And for me, the Hastings High School music program has significantly impacted me in my passions and what I want to pursue in college and helping me get into college. The chorus program has been the only place where I've learned to love singing classical music, and the only place where I get the opportunity to sing really good classical music. And that's something I really value as a performer and as a singer. Also, throughout my time in high school, I've been so lucky that both Mr. Riss and Mr. Rubino have taken time to personally instruct me and help me grow as a performer. Mr. Rubino from 8th grade helped me and some of my friends form a small singing group, and we've stayed together throughout all of high school. And Mr. Riss has helped me on multiple occasions with sight reading and performance, and helping me videotape my college supplements, which really helped me get into a highly selective university. And I can't even it's hard for me to explain how much I care about this program and how much it has helped me grow. And I think it would be a shame to deny other Hastings students this privilege.
Hi. First, a practical note. First of all, hello. I don't want to be a purveyor of the obvious, but I do want to suggest that many of us have probably realized that a replacement for Mr. Jernigan. Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara Prisament, parent of a sophomore and a recent graduate, and Hastings resident, obviously. So obviously a replacement wouldn't necessarily warrant the same salary that Mr. Jernigan made at the end of his tenure, right? So there are some savings there. But on a more personal note, as someone, this is really important, I think possibly different factor than's been brought up so far. As someone who does struggle to pay the school tax bill, all right, I want to speak from that place, I'm sure I'm not the only one, who does have to juggle in order to do that, just as you have to juggle to balance the budget. When I attend a concert at this school ever since my children were small, and every band they've been in, and even when I watch the groups that my children are not in, like the chorus, etc., I literally say to myself in those moments, that's why I pay the school tax bill. That's why I actually struggle to pay the school tax bill. That's why I don't feel foolish for not moving to a place I can actually afford to live. Because sometimes I do feel a little foolish about that. But it's not just the quality of the overall education, which it is. It's the administration. It's all of the faculty. It's the breadth and depth of course offerings here. But it is literally when I actually think to myself as I leave, that's why I do it. All right? And when I make that sacrifice, and when I see my remember, teenage son, as this young man said before, get up at 6:30 in the morning. Let me be honest with you, he gets up at 7 and he leaves at 7:02. But the fact is, I'd like to say 6:30 sounds better, but the truth is that that's a miracle. And he does that 3 times a week, and he goes out on Wednesday nights for jazz band. And if our current staff, as talented and wonderful as they are, get spread so thin that some of those offerings go away, I will not feel okay that I have borrowed from the bank to pay my tax bill. Okay, so please don't take that away from us. It's a slippery slope, and we're all sacrificing, many of us are, to keep it as it is, and if anything, as Ruby said earlier, to grow it at the very least, not to take anything away from it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jen Cregan here in Hastings, and my name is Jen Gambatisse when I'm on Broadway. And I mentioned that second bit because I honestly don't know how I have made it there in the 7 shows I've been in, because I came from a school system that did not have this, not one bit. Folding chairs in the middle school gym, that's where I started. And it's been such a privilege to be a part of this community and see how much everyone cares, especially about this program. And my daughter is in 4th grade and not the least bit interested in performing at all, so I'm not even really speaking for her. But there's so much research that shows that education in the arts benefits people who don't pursue artistic careers. It's collaborative, it's creative, and it's obviously so important to so many of us. So my question for you is, knowing this timeline and you asking us like to remain involved, what is the best way for non-numbers people to do that besides showing up? How are ways that we, besides, you know, signing up for the different booster organizations, what are ways that we can help you make these tough decisions specifically, is my question.
I mean, I can just say very briefly to that, which is we do get write-ins from a lot of people with a lot. We got a lot from you, a lot of people here. We read all of them. We got about, I don't know, 50 emails, some of them multiple paragraphs long with a lot of detail, and it I think it probably impacted all of us on the board. I think it opened all of our eyes to different dynamics that we weren't aware of. And so that's really helpful. Coming to board meetings more frequently is always great, but you know, I know that there's not always the draw for that, and you've got a lot on your plates. Booster clubs are great, so just in any way that you can stay involved. I can tell you that I wasn't that involved with the school until I got onto the board, and you know, that's just one way to get involved. You see a lot once you start getting involved. You know, I would say pick a spot to anyone. I think a lot of you have probably picked music. I know we hear from the boosters, from the athletic boosters from time to time on a variety of topics. We hear from athletic teams on a variety of topics. We hear from the academic teams and academic challenge. We hear from a lot of different people. And so I think one of the things that's great about tonight is we're seeing a group of people we've never seen at a board meeting before. And the people who are focused on academics tend to show up at the board meetings a lot more. And so, you know, kind of pick your passion and get engaged and involved there. And I do think that this is extremely inspiring to just be in this room right now. So I would say to continue to find places to do that.
And I would also just say, just to, you know, indirect response, it's really great when we hear from you, because sometimes we're weighing things and we don't know how the community will feel. So writing to us is great. Communicating, be it writing or be it coming to do a public comment, is terrific.
Well, and
thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add is just the level of involvement that exists in this room right now is around a very specific topic, but there's a tremendous amount of information that goes out from the board generally across all topics, and we're all, I think, collectively handle an onslaught of email and communication. But it's really very important for the long-term functioning of the school that you carve a little bit of time to look at the emails that don't just pertain to your child, but broadly speaking. So, for example, this bond vote that comes up, it's an important bond vote. It's an important bond vote because if it doesn't pass, and I'm not advocating a position one way or the other, it's not my position to do that, but if it doesn't pass and something happens and we need to make capital expenditures and we're doing it without state aided and it comes out of the operating budget, that can have implications on how the operating budget functions for all other you know, both the academic program that we provide and the non-academic program that we provide. And so that's a level of sort of awareness and engagement and understanding of how the district functions collectively. So that's a way to take this engagement, involvement in this specific point, and sort of read it across. By being sort of thoughtful and engaged across all of the various sort of components of how the district operates, it's really beneficial to us as a board. It creates feedback. You'll have questions that you'll email us and ask us, and so that's how. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Jeff Pacillo. I'm a parent of a couple of high schoolers here. I'm also on the Booster, the Music Booster Club, so do sign up. We really would love to hear from all of you. We've heard from a bunch of people, students here, who are pursuing various creative endeavors, but, you know, we don't teach children music in school because we're trying to turn them into professional musicians any more than we teach them basketball in gym because we think they're going to join the NBA, right? When a kid sees a black dot on a bunch of lines and they look at it and they identify it and they say, that's an E flat. And they play that E flat on their instrument and they hear that E flat as a note, they've crafted a matrix that uses 3 of their 5 senses. And they're multi-processing these layers of data at lightning speed, and they're doing that just when they play by themselves. And then when you throw them in an ensemble with a bunch of other musicians, dozens of kids who are collaborating and cooperating with these layers of data, all at lightning speed, I mean, it's incredible. And we in the audience, we hear it as music, but in a musician's mind, their brain is firing these synapses and they're fusing in ways that nothing else can provide. You don't get it from traditional academics, you don't get it from sports, you don't get it from a computer screen. Now, some of these kids may go off and become musicians or performers of some kind. But for most of them, the music education gives them a huge advantage no matter what they go into. If they're going into finance or law or marketing or humanities or computer science, you name it, they're getting an enormous benefit. I'm not making this up. There are a bunch of studies about it. I have an article that's a 5-minute read. I will send it to you. I won't bore you with the findings here. But Ken Jernigan's retirement is not a tragedy. It's not. It's a celebration of a job incredibly well done. This does not mark the end of a period of like profligate spending and wasting our money. This is a moment to take stock of the biggest bang for the buck that this school district has ever received. This man gave us a gift of this music program, and I think it's our job in this community to accept this gift graciously, to value it for what it is, and to invest in this gift and grow it, not starve it, so that every kid in this town gets the advantage of a music education. I want to thank you, especially Maureen. I don't know how you do that. Thank you very much for doing what you're doing, and thank you for your time.
Totally. So that's like hard to follow. I promise not to be as inspiring, but I wanted to thank the board. Oh, my name and... I don't think anybody else here. Shelley Steinwurzel. I have one elementary school child and a middle schooler. And I speak to you as a parent who can't clap on tune. Like, I am completely not musical at all, nor is my husband. And I want to just say that as somebody who does not create music or know how to play music, the music program that we currently have has created a musician in my household, and I really credit Mr. Rubino for that because of band. And so the idea of removing those lessons from the elementary level is really sad to me. The idea of not having Mr. Rubino's energy, bringing children who otherwise would not necessarily have access to these lessons, I think would be really unfortunate. Like so many of the other students, I mean, my daughter is yelling at us like, I need to get to band, I need to get to chorus, like and these are her passions, these are the things that she talks to us about, now she has no aspirations for being a professional musician, but these are the places where she will come home and share the experience of what it was like in band, or who's playing what, or who can also play the, I don't even know, C-flat clarinet. Like, you know, I don't even know what these things mean. I can't help her with it, but she is now teaching my younger daughter how to play the piano because of what has been instituted at that very elementary level. I only sing in the shower. I felt bad to sing to my children as babies because my voice is so bad. She is in chorus and loves it and sounds beautiful. So that's just to say I really hope that we don't lose all of that, and to thank, you know, I really appreciate what the board does. What you guys have to do is like the impossible task, because we have so many great things and so many things that need funding, and I don't envy the task of figuring out where to cut, but I hope it's not in the music. I also just want to say, in terms of like, our kids are very stressed out, I think. They have a lot of pressure on them. And something that music does, and I know this from where I work, one of the things that we tell our parents to do with their ill babies is to sing to them. And they can record special music to help their systems calm down, to help their brains develop. And this is a funded program because the research is consistent with how much this helps their sensory systems. And so, you know, I think that probably I'm finished, but thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Amanda Capillis, and I have an incoming kindergartner coming into the school system, and I have a current first grader. I first want to say that I am a graduate of Hastings High School, and I had distinct, wonderful memories of taking clarinet with Mr. Urbino. And honestly, and singing with the jazz band in high school, and getting to create my artistic self. And then I went to school at University of the Arts in Philadelphia, became a dancer, got to dance, and now that's what I do. And but what I wanted to say is that arts make us creative, right? That's what makes us thinkers. You know, even if you're a math student or somebody who doesn't like to sing, you know, it inspires us, and that music inspired me. And I think that's what we need to really kind of hold on to. But I also have a question about, I was at the Bond meeting, and it was about space, music on a cart with space. And now it's music because of budget. So if it's the music at Hillside, if it doesn't have any cuts with budget, is there going to be a problem with space?
Yeah. Not if the bond passes.
Yeah, no, next year we'll still be tight on the space with the music program, as we've been talking about.
But I do think that's precisely one of the reasons that we are proposing a bond, because otherwise it has to be dealt with. No, just a quick thought that's another reason for the bond, is the space issue currently is forcing us into a music on a cart situation, and that's one of the things we need to correct.
Oh, there's more seats up here.
Yeah, there's some more seats up here if anyone wants to come sit down.
Hi, my name is Jacob Rodebeck, and I have a daughter who is in kindergarten this year. I just want to say, my wife and I are both musicians. I'm a pianist, she's a singer. We both teach. She teaches K through 2, I teach 6th through 12th grade music. And I just want to address regarding the pipeline idea is, from elementary school on up, the foundations that come from experiencing music at that age are so important. And it's what's is concerning me is the possible move to having music only once a week, or once every 6 days actually, which is less than that. Students learn music just like they learn a language, also by experiencing it regularly. It's better, I tell all of my students, it's better to do 5 minutes a day of practice than do 1 hour the day before whatever test or concert that you may be doing. It's that regularity that's really important, and taking that away from the elementary school will really slow down their growth into the middle and high school programs. So that's a concern that I have. And I'd say this is the reason that my wife and I moved to this town, is because we know that the arts are supported here, and I love seeing this. It's really wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to be really quick. Also, I'm losing my voice, so sorry. I've been sick. But I'm Jen Roos, and I have a senior who has been involved in the music program in jazz ensemble and band and all over the place, and then a sophomore who's been in chorus and singing and loving it. But the one thing that I wanted to point out, too, is that this conversation about the budget has shifted us away from saying, oh my God, we're losing this spectacular member of our teaching community, and how are we going to find an amazing replacement? It has now switched it to, oh my God, can we just get a body in there, and is that even going to be possible? And I worry about that too, because I think we should be talking about, at this moment in time, celebrating Mr. Jernigan and saying, how can we reach out to the world and find just as an amazing replacement and make this program kind of live. So that's all I wanted to say.
Hi, my name is Ann Mackey. I hate public speaking, so it takes an enormous amount to get me to do this. I also have a prepared statement that I'm not going to read because everyone else has been so eloquent. I just wanted to make a few bullet points I hadn't quite heard. One thing is we've been talking about the pipeline. The other thing, much respect to anybody who does budgets, but it really pained me to see these wonderful music teachers sort of described as sort of .2s and .4s and .3s. That's not how music teaching works. It's a very specialized set of skills. The teachers who've been teaching our youngest kids are really, really good at that. And they do beautiful work there. And the teachers who are teaching our upper-level kids do beautiful work there. And they're not the same thing. They're not just interchangeable just because they teach music. Let's see. I also just wanted to touch on, people have talked about social emotional learning, mental health. That's huge. I recently joined a chorus after about 35 years not singing. It brought me so much joy, that first concert. When we give kids this gift when they're young, they're going to pick it up later. Oh, and the other thing I just wanted, my husband stole my line in his letter to the board, so I want to steal it back. And what it was I said, I thought it would be nearly impossible to fill Ken's shoes. I never imagined we would consider throwing them away. Thank you.
I'm the father of a 10th grade cellist and a college student violinist, and the executive director of River Arts. Doug Co. And the one thing that I haven't heard said yet is, I get all the numbers. I get how hard it is. Every school district in the nation looks to the arts. Let's get rid of that and save money there. And it's so important because of everything that has been said. Already in our district, the majority of the work of the music department happens before school and after school. It's already been shoved out of the schedule. It's so important, and it doesn't happen anymore, hardly. And now we want to cut it even more. I don't know how these teachers have kept it going at the level with it constantly being, it's less important, it's less important, it's less important. It's more important, and we have to have a specialist in strings at the high school level, or we don't have a program.
Hi, I'm Deb King, and you wouldn't know by the amount of times that I speak at these meetings when I am able to come that I also truly hate public speaking. Anyone who knows my kids knows that they have been highly involved in the music program in all aspects of it. And I would just like to say, first of all, Doug, I resent anyone implying that anyone sitting in here who is involved, whether it's a student or a parent, and invested in the music program is not equally invested in academics. They often go hand in hand. Many of our musicians are equally invested in their academics, and these kids bust their chops. I would equally like to say, Tim, that I felt it almost as a threat that if we don't pass this bond, that somehow things are now going to be taken out of the operating budget, very possibly music, just because that's where we're standing here. Whereas I'm sure if this budget doesn't, if the bond doesn't pass, I would assume you guys could come back with a different bond for whatever reasons this bond didn't pass. I would just like to put that that's how I felt when you were speaking. In terms of the music program, there's a lot more to music than notes on a page. These kids are not just learning and having their neurons stretched before their brains fully developed how to read music and listen to a foreign language and make sense of it on paper or through their other senses. They also learn not only how to be a leader, but almost equally important, how and when to be a follower. Because music is only happening in groups. You have to sit in the same room as the people that are doing it. You can't go learn it online. You can't go take a supplemental course at community college. You're sitting here with these people, and our teachers do their utmost to make it happen. I did some research on other districts. The amount of credits those other districts give their kids for courses like jazz band. Our kids don't earn credit for it, and yet they show up from 6 to 9 o'clock when they could be doing so many other things. Our kids show up to music programs that they are not earning a half a credit for because it's important and because our teachers are important. And our teachers are raising our kids for 6 years right now. For my daughter, that was the most significant male figure, longest term, she had in her life on a daily basis, having lost her father at a very early age. These things are important. Nowhere else in the district are teachers able to follow these kids and raise them. And this is, I hope they realize it's important to us and it's important to our kids.
I'll stand. Hi, I'm Michelle Vavoda. I'm a Hastings resident, and I have a pre-K, a child in pre-K, and I have a second grader. And I'm the child of 2 music teachers. My mom was a vocal music teacher in the South Bronx, very different environment, and I saw, what a struggle it was for her to produce a music program at that school with very limited community support and very limited funding. And my father was an instrumental music teacher, so obviously I had no choice but to play multiple instruments and be in the chorus as well. And so, you know, I think that's kind of just how my life was shaped, and the arts were always a really big priority for us. And so, as many people, similar to many people here, I think that was one of the main things that I was considering. Not like, you know, it wasn't that I heard of Hastings first and, you know, oh, you should move to this town because they really prioritize arts. But when we were interested in moving here and we learned about the arts programming here, it was a really big selling point for us. And, you know, I started having these visions of the kind of music program that my children would have the opportunity to take advantage of. And we're a long time away from, you know, I don't even recognize so many people in this room because I don't know how many elementary school parents are here. So I haven't had the experience of the high school program yet. But I've been looking forward to it. And I think I was really upset because I saw that whatever change might be made, budgeting for the high school music program would then kind of trickle down to the elementary school programs. And I think for a lot of districts, they might say, like, oh, well, you know, kids K through 4, music once a week. I mean, that's what I had, you know, growing up in a different district. But I think a lot of districts might think that that's enough. But like has been said by other people here, it's that consistency and having it repeated more than once a week that's really establishing a foundation for our children to become really, you know, good learners of music and establish that pipeline up through the high school. And I asked my daughter, my second grader, I was like, so what, you know, how would you feel if you only had music once every 6 days? And she was like, no, that's the best special. And she said, we get certificates when, you know, for our behavior. And we, you know, and she's telling me all these things that they do. And I'm like, okay, so you're learning, like, you know, how to behave as part of a music group, and you're learning foreign languages because the song she learned today was not in English. And now we're talking about cutting foreign language at Hillside. So children can also learn foreign language through music, and they can learn so many other collaborative skills and, you know, learn about different cultures. We're always talking about how we need more diversity programming at Hillside. Well, music offers that too. So I think it would just be, thank you, very short-sighted in a number of ways to cut that program. Thanks.
Mark Pennington, father of 2 graduates. My daughter Liza is the confident, competent, and compassionate person she is because of the Hastings High School music program, and particularly because of Ken Jernigan's mentorship. And I'm concerned about a loss of diversity in his absence. The particular programs of steel drums and jazz, if they're in any way endangered by these cuts, and the lack of depth to the program. I won't go on and say the other things I'd thought of saying, but one thing I haven't heard spoken about, except in the last comments, is how critical music is to our common humanity in a time when our humanity is so endangered. There is no other medium by which we can communicate our cultural identity and our history. And having been touring the country and the world with a chorus, I've seen incredible communication that comes about when people share music. And it's absolutely critical, I think, that we keep this a strong program and we keep those particular elements of it vital.
Hi, I'm Mairead Diap. I have a current sophomore in the school and also a recent graduate. I really wanted to speak to something that struck me when I first heard about the possibility of us losing some of our programs and cutting back, especially for the younger kids. And that is that we all are very aware of how stressed out our children are in the current time. Like, it's unbelievable how stressed out our kids are in so many ways. And I know that Eva at the beginning mentioned how the music program is what gets her up out of bed in the morning and to school, and often is what gets her through her day. And I think that she is not an exception. I think a lot of our kids depend upon the music program to get them to school in the morning and to get them through their day. And if we cut back on some of these programs, not only are we taking this away from these kids who, rely upon this to help them deal with their stress, but I think we're also being very, very short-sighted, because we're going to need a lot more counselors in the school, and counselors are expensive. So, I think it's a very, very bad choice of where to cut for that reason. And also, I'm looking here at our group of wonderful music teachers, and I'm thinking, what about these teachers? What if they suddenly have to take on a lot of extra classes, a lot of extra kids? They're already, most of them, doing extra work after hours that they're not even being paid for. How would you feel if you were put in that situation? First of all, you lose an incredible member of the music program, which unfortunately there's nothing we can do about that, other than get someone else in who is hopefully just as good. If all of these teachers are kind of left in the lurch and are not being supported and are given extra work to do, again, we're being short-sighted. Who knows how many of them will leave? I'm sure none of them are thinking about that now. I hope they're not. But I can see it happening, and I don't think it takes me to plant the seed. I think if people don't feel appreciated, they'll move on, and you can't fault them for that. So those are just two very sort of depressing but important things that I wanted to mention tonight. Thank you.
Hi, Andy Zimmerman. I live in Hastings. Unlike probably most of you, I grew up here. I went to these schools. And just to the comment that somebody said about the NBA and how we don't expect our basketball players to ever be professionals, I don't think it's an exact parallel, because as far as I know, there's a lot more professional musicians than there are professional basketball players. And it is quite possible that some of them will be. And I came up in the Pete DeLuke era. Some of my best friends did become professional musicians and still are, and that was because of the training they got here at the Hastings schools. And that's the tradition that Ken Jernigan is part of, that we're trying not to lose. And bringing up the present, this is my son, Jasper. He's in 6th grade. He might be a professional musician. I don't know what he's going to decide to do, but I think he has the talent if he wants to. And so obviously for us, music is very important. If this gets through, it goes through, and the music department starts to decline, I just think we're going to have to move out, and we're going to have to move away from our home, and that would be very sad. We're not going to be in much mood to vote for any budgets or any bonds while we're trying to get rid of our house, but maybe not everybody's in that boat, but I'm just saying from my own personal point of view, that's how I feel. I just think we need to look at this. I know I'm going to be thinking a lot harder about the budget than I ever have before, because I just don't even understand how we could get to this pass where we'd even be considering this, and getting rid of Spanish for that matter. In the elementary school, I think is also important. Actually, Jasper's into Latin music, and maybe it's because he studied Spanish for the first 4 years or 5 years in Hillside. I don't know, but it's just we're cutting to the bone and into the bone now, and we have to sit back and look at what our priorities are and how this happened. Thank you.
I just want to. We do have. Janice Mateo Toledo is here to do a presentation. She's been waiting very patiently for a couple hours now. So thank you, Janice. She's in what she calls the green room over there. And so I don't want to cut off public comment at all. If you've got a comment, I also just want to throw out there for everyone to be mindful. I think we've gotten a lot of data, both in the letters that were sent and all the comments. It certainly has continued to evolve my appreciation of the program here. I've always known it's a great program. I've always heard a lot of great stories, but the depth and the breadth of the comments have certainly helped me personally understand more, and I'm assuming the rest of the board would say the same. So what I would throw out there is if there's something that you really feel hasn't been said and you really feel is important to say, please stand up right now, maybe raise your hand. And so we've got maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 people. If we could, there's okay, 30 seconds. There's more. You're saying 5, maybe 5. If we could keep it to those maybe 4 or 5 people to be respectful. Let's go.
Email address for people who want to write.
Sure. BOE@hohschools.org.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Maria Aney, and I live in Hastings. I've heard a lot like everyone else, but I'd like to make a bridge between our concerns for not replacing Jernigan and spreading his schedule amongst these wonderful teachers and the many emotional testimonies that have been given about his jazz band, his steel drums, and orchestra. Those are not part of his regular schedule, if I understand it correctly. So while his regular classwork may be up for being spread, what do we do about the other ensembles that he was here at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning? My son was at the night before talking to him about sausages and meat until 9:30, 10 o'clock. And they were both, present at both. So, yes, it's great. The solution, as the gentleman over there said, well, he's retiring, we have the money, why replace him? Which I took that very personal. How can we support or find a solution to continue what has bonded this community so strongly is the jazz band, the steel drums, and most importantly, the education that he gave my son about Duke Ellington and Jaco Pastorius and everyone else that he knows about right now and he listens to instead of being in front of a screen. So for me, that's the most important question is, yes, we will find a replacement in the classroom one way or another, but it's these unreplaceable activities that he has put into this community that I have not heard a solution to. And I'd like to leave it up to all of you to try to think about that. Thank you.
I just want to point out, I think this is really important for the community to understand how the process of making decisions about the school district works. I think a lot of times people see the board because we're the visible space, but there is a lot of process that goes on that is much more in depth with pedagogy, if you talk about curriculum, the music, that's left in the hands of the professionals who've been trained in this in the district. We are, after those plans have been well thought through, well vetted, chatted with a lot, and processed a lot, we are the ones who vote on proposals, having read a lot of that. So I just want to be clear, because sometimes I think people aren't really aware of how the process of running a school district works, and that is a process we're in the middle of. So to your point, it was Anna, is that? And to your point, I think you raise an excellent point. Mr. Jernigan did a lot of great things around here. Some of those questions you're asking are questions that can be answered in a budget with hiring some of them. Some of them are beyond that. Some of them are things he did on his own time. There's a lot of complexity there, and that's something that the board is not going to solve. That's something that the school district alone isn't going to solve. That's something that the school district, the board, working with the district, working with the administration, working with the teachers, working with the booster club, working with the parents, that we're going to come together and solve as a community. And I think it's really important because, for us to be up here and to oftentimes feel like there's a you need to, it's a very tough position. Number one, because it's tough to sit in this all the time and hear that all the time. But number two, because there's only a limited amount of stuff a Board of Education can do. A Board of Education is representatives of you. You send us here to represent you, but we are the ones that listen to the proposals and listen to the input from the community, and work to get the solve to that you're talking about, that's going to take a lot of collective community effort. I think this is an amazing start to that, but it's only a start because this man's shoes, Mr. Jernigan's shoes, is 28 years. Mr. Rubino, Mr. Carini are doing amazing things. How do we bring that all together? We don't have the answer. But we can try to find the answer together. So what I want to do is I want to bring us together and make sure this doesn't feel like an either or and us against them. There's a certain level of natural tendency for that to happen between a community and a board. I just want to communicate that can be very difficult for board members because we dedicate a tremendous amount of time to trying to find these solutions, and we want to work with you in order to do that. And sometimes it feels like it's combative right out of the gates when it sometimes is just 25 decisions we've been asked to make, and number 23 hits you the wrong way. But to us, it was like, wow, I just had to make 21, 22, and 23 was like a next one I had to make. And so here we are, and this one has struck a chord, and it's waking all of us up, including the board. Let's work together collaboratively, collectively, to find these solutions. I just want to throw that out there so it doesn't feel combative.
I have the mic. Hi, I'm Laura Weitzman. I have a fourth grader and a 10th grader, and I came here tonight to listen and learn and lend support around the music program. But what happened was, when you have all spoken so beautifully to that, I don't feel like I need to add to that. But something else happened, which was that when I was looking at the slide presentation and I saw foreign language being dropped, what I thought about was, God, I gotta tell you, I don't like that program. And I would go to the mat for it, you know, because if our foreign language program here at the elementary and middle school was as well developed as our music program was, I think we would get the same community response to dropping it. And I think it's just quieter because it's not a very well developed program. But it's no secret that we're in a world that is more globally connected than ever. We're having challenges with white nationalism and racism here in our community and everywhere in our country. And foreign language is an early bridge for young minds to begin to connect themselves to each other across differences. And it's a huge lever in hiring later in life also. And the experience that I hear over and over again in this community is that, and that my kids have seen, you get to the high school and all of a sudden you're like thrown into the deep end of this really rich language program. And so I say, if we can, let's build it up rather than cut it out.
Hi, I'm Arti Muthukrishnan. I have a kindergartner and a third grader. Really love the music program so far. And I've heard really good things about things to come, right? So here to support that, I'm not going to repeat all the good stuff that all the families here have already said. I just have a question. Having heard all of this, what are the next steps, right? This is the first time I'm showing up for a meeting like this, and it was eye-opening. And I probably should have shown up earlier as well, and to find out about fewer assistants and aides in the kindergarten class is actually, I don't like that, because I have a kindergarten, I see the impact of that on my kids, right? So what would be helpful is if you could give out options, like option 1, these are the 3 things. Option 2, these are the, these things are the ones that are going to go away, so that people can vote on them. And you, like Mr. Rubino said, vote on our values, right? And you can see what are the values that we as a community are prioritizing, because clearly there's a lot of support for the arts here, but then there's also other things in there that I think a lot of people were not aware about. Clearly, at least I was not, and I would love to know what the options are very tactically going forward.
So if I may, I think that as we saw the slides, there were on just about every slide different options. They're not a secret.
Right, but what is the, like, is it something that we get to vote on, or is it?
So to answer your question, it's now the job of the board to really get in to study these and to start to make those decisions. But at least now, whatever they do, they will be well informed of just how much this community values its music and its music programs. And that certainly has been impressed very effectively by this outpouring tonight. And you guys have advanced, your real feelings, and I think that the board will look for ways, if at all possible, I should think, to save the program. But still, they have these other problems. They will be informed by what you said, but they do have to now look at the list, the long list of other items. That's just the way it's done every year, by the way. It's not because we're in an economic crisis, but we do have to be economically prudent.
Let me just answer it with one additional piece, which is the way in which this process works is Maureen and the finance office is in communication with the building leaders, the principals, the assistant principals. Principals and assistant principals are thinking about, how do I optimize my school? And they're talking to their teachers and specials instructors. It's in talking to your children's teachers, it's in talking to the building leaders of your children's schools, saying the things that you really like, saying the things you'd like to have changed, because if every parent does that at the start of every school year or at this, December, January period, and this process, this is an annual process, this is not new, we're just all engaged in it right now. But when this process begins, how much more informed are Amy and Gail and Lou, because they're getting feedback from parents regularly? And this is not to I don't hopefully have them inundated, because they also have a job to do in terms of running their schools, but it's just that, sharing your opinion, every individual's opinion collects to become, a consensus opinion, and that opinion finds its way between the building leaders to Maureen, which then comes to us as program recommendations, and we'll go through this process again, and it's just that ongoing process of refinement. That would be my recommendation. It won't result in an immediate change. You see something that you like and you mention it to Amy or Gail, and it's an immediate change, but generally speaking, in totality, that's the way in which we arrive at a high-functioning district.
I don't want to get us off track, because I know Janice has been waiting for a while, but just to speak to the process too, yes, Maureen and the Finance Committee has been working on creating this presentation, but as an entire board, we really didn't see all of it until today. We had gotten a preliminary understanding yesterday and got a full understanding today, and I didn't really understand until today about the kindergarten aides. And as someone who is an early childhood educator, I say that that's really important, but as I'm sitting here, I'm jotting down ideas of how we could solve that problem so that our classrooms are still supported by enough adults. For example, something that could be proposed, and this is not something that it would need to go through the building leaders, but for example, a model where the aides are staffed by graduate school interns who need to have their fieldwork classroom assignments, or a team of adult volunteer kindergarten aides from the community. There are ways that we can solve the problem and still fill that particular need for students.
And just before you comment, I'm sorry, just a lot of what Lauren said, I was actually thinking about myself, just to echo back. And a lot of these things we're still taking in ourselves as board members who were not part of that finance committee. And I know personally, in hearing this, as a Hastings graduate, although I wasn't one of Mr. Jernigan's jazz band students. Muffins? I was still a muffin because I was a student at Hastings, and he inspired me in so many ways just because of who he is as a person, and he inspired me to even go out for the musical, which was something that I never thought I would do, and then I eventually did it in college. But I am not a musician. I'm a school teacher and I'm a board member, but the reasons why I wanted to get involved and be confident was because of experiences that I had with people like Mr. Jernigan. So to hear all of you and to see you coming out to support that really meant a lot to me personally as a board member, so that you could help inform our decisions with the budget. So I thank all of you who came out, and I came here in a concussed state, literally, because I felt so strongly about that. So thank you for also showing your support for what is Mr. Jernigan.
Hi, my name is Rafaela de la Huerta. I have two children, a first grader and a fifth grader. And I don't know Mr. Jernigan, but I'm sorry we're not going to be able to experience him firsthand. So, I've heard about music from a lot of people, and foreign language also was brought up earlier in the presentation where I wasn't here. I don't really see either of those subjects as some kind of optional extra. I hate specials. I don't, it's part of the curriculum. Like, that's part of what you learn in school, you know. And I think people have talked about music a lot. I do want to talk about foreign language because I feel similarly to the person that already spoke. I always go at back to school night and I ask, what are you going to do to increase the foreign language here? What are you going to do to enrich that program? Because really, we're so behind. I mean, has anyone traveled out of the country? Like, it's like a stereotype. I mean, we're, you know, not versed in America on second languages, and everywhere you go, people speak English, and that's because it's part of their core curriculum. It's like something they have every day. And I'm delighted my daughter has Spanish every day in 5th grade right now, and I wish it had happened sooner. And I think it's really minimal at Hillside, and I want it to increase, not decrease. So I really want to think, I don't think it's an aside, it's not a special, it's really builds a lot of the same neuroplasticity as music. It's another way of expressing yourself. It makes kids smarter, and it makes them function better in business. I wouldn't have my job if I didn't have some proficiency in a second language. I want to learn another one, and that'll increase my ability to work in my field. And I'm not in the arts. So, you know, yeah, I don't think it's negotiable. Thanks.
Doug, I just want to say one thing. It's okay? I want to thank everybody. I think what an incredible tribute this is to Ken Jernigan, but also really to the music department. I always worried about what was going to happen when Ken decided to retire, because I, too, had that experience with one of my kids of the things that he learned about jazz, the Duke Ellingtons, everything that never would have been exposed, well, might not have been exposed to, I wouldn't say never, but was exposed to, better said. And I always knew that in some ways he would be, I always thought he would be irreplaceable, even though probably none of us are irreplaceable. But what I really think is that he's got big shoes to fill, which I think is true of the rest of the music department, by the way. And I worry about that with others in the music department, because it's such a, they're so gifted. I think we heard a lot about what Jern brought to this community, and I'm really, really sorry for the parents here who won't have a chance to have him, because he is a unique experience for kids in high school. I think we will give, I guess I give my promise of a commitment that we will seriously consider this, and we have to struggle with all of this bond to think about what are our priorities and what are our values and how are we going to make this work. And I think clearly this does speak to, I think, Dr. Wilson, you get a real flavor for what I like to think of as the real Hastings, not a lot of the other stuff that you've been able to see while you've been here. But this, to me, speaks so much to why so many people live here and move here and stay here. And one more thing, and I also have that, Barb, I have that same experience. I still like to go to some of the concerts, and I feel like, wow, this makes worth paying your taxes, you know, school taxes. Anyway, we'll struggle with this. But as Doug said, we're doing this with you. It's not us versus you.
Thank you. I think we're going to try to wrap up. Is this like burning must be said?
I think it's an interesting point.
Okay.
My name is Ashley DeWitt. I have 3 children at Hillside. And I'm new to Hastings. This has been such a powerful and remarkable conversation. I feel grateful to be a part of it. Something that really struck me when I came to this community is I looked at the mission statement, and I just looked at it again. And I noticed that the arts isn't explicitly in the mission statement, the one that I read. And I wondered if just hearing this passion, and it's something that we're committed to as a community, if it's worth going back and looking at what our vision is as a community. And that's, you know, one of those directives from the board down. What's our educational vision and mission for this community? What do we want it to look like in the future? And I think if we have that strong mission that includes the arts, and maybe it's there but I missed it, that will sort of, in some ways, I think, prevent these types of conversations, because we know that we're committed to these parts, important parts of our community, and we'll invest in them from now on. So just something to think about. It's also a proactive way for us all to work together, so that it's not, you know, anyone us against them, but together working on a community vision.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would just like to make one comment before we go, because I don't know if many people will stay. And in light of the comments that have been made around language, I do want to share my conversation with the head of world language. And I will say that, yes, with music, you know, my family was deeply involved, and it changed my children for the better. So we hear you. But just real quick, I think the points that Lara made and the other woman made are excellent, that yes, we have a Spanish program now that's not really working that well at the elementary school, and I believe that was the reason why Maureen recommended that we end it. So I had a great call with Nora Bertacci. She's our fabulous chair of our world language department, and I said, hey Nora, because I started to do some reading around this, I said, hey Nora, what if we did this in a budget neutral way? We used to have 2 people, so I kind of said we're starving the baby, you know, and you take away 1 person and you're really hurting the program. What if we keep the 1 person, but instead of having the teacher work K through 5, have the teacher work 3 through 4? And Nora thought that that was a really interesting idea. That way we could have enough instruction time, we would have more of it. And she said that there also are schools of thought that say it may be better to delay learning a language a little bit until their reading skills are down a little more. So anyway, I just want to put that out there. We can talk about it later, but since it was raised, I wanted you to know that that idea is out there.
I just want to clarify that those type of recommendations come from building administrators, not myself.
I'm sorry,
No, I'm saying you said I made the recommendation. I don't have that type of power here.
Amy's recommendation, sorry.
Okay, so
I think so highly of you. Oh, no, I appreciate it. I don't want to take credit for that one. So.
Really?
We've got, looks like we've got a mass exodus. Janice is still here?
Yeah, I hope
okay.
so.
She's coming. Okay.
I mean, the one thing the board, you should maybe at one point, you know,
discuss.
Like after Janice's proposal, maybe we can go back around the table, because I think,
I would like to have some conversations about this.
you know, only because I think many people, here tonight, okay, that you haven't seen it till tonight, so.
We'll edit that, Lisa. We'll edit that.
And also, this one, you know, you can't. Yes, it is. Does anyone want water?
Oh, I would love one. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I never gave you the Coke. No, it's right. There might be a diet. All right. You know, with some of
Thank you,
these
Jane.
things, I
Do you
position you can't back.
Doug, can we have them share before Jenny? Like, I feel like it's just getting
Sure.
late.
You know what?
The kids share.
No, we
Just because it's getting kind of late.
You guys are pretty quick, right? So. Okay. In the interest of time, we're going to keep rolling here. So if you want to have a conversation, if you could please move it to the hallway or downstairs, we'd appreciate it. Janice, we're going to come to you in 1 second. We're just going to have the students report for like 2 seconds. Oh, yeah. Power nap. Okay. Elliot and Claire here. They're going to, I don't know if you both are. One of you will share tonight the student report. So
yeah,
please.
So obviously, I'm not part of the orchestra. I am part of steel drums. It's been a really fun part of my high school experience. And I just had a bunch of conversations over the past few days with people in light of the proposal that got out about reallocating time of instruction between the people who are already part of the music department. And I had a really great conversation with one member of student union and orchestra who said that it's not just so finding someone who is able to teach steel drums at a high level will be difficult regardless of what qualifications you put in what you want as a music position. But it's just that programs exist for people whose achieving outlet is music. So I think that whatever process is used to find a replacement, hopefully there will be a replacement of some sort, has background in some things that are extra or above and beyond, so that students, the point is that it doesn't really matter what it is, it just matters that things exist for people who want to go pursue music achievement beyond just the classes, that those programs exist. That was my conversation. And yeah, everything else is pretty much reiterated by many, many people at this meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. You good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. And I know if you've got places to be and things to study, feel free to.
Thank you.
Thank you both for staying here. Appreciate it. So with that, we want to pass the presentation over to Janice Mateo Toledo. She has been our diversity coordinator officially for this school year, and the board's goals. One of the board's goals is to look at diversity, and the name of the committee is now diversity. Just diversity.
Diversity.
Just
right.
okay.
Suggestion.
Yeah. So the diversity committee and Janice and the diversity committee, a couple members of the board, and a broader set of teachers and administrators in the district have been working on a variety of different thoughts and plans. And Janice is going to present those now.
Hi, everyone. So before I begin, I first want to thank the board for writing a letter to the enterprise that was very direct and very clear. And I thought that was a really great moment for our district. So I want to first thank you all for doing that. I thought that was really important. I think it sets the tone for what we're trying to do as a district, so thank you. Okay. So I wanted to start off with the board's goals. So these were goals that were set for us by the board. The first goal, we talked about developing and articulating a clear vision for diversity and inclusion. Is this better? Sorry. We talked about looking at our hiring practices. We discussed the incidence of bias protocol that we've kind of been working on for some time. We also talked about developing and implementing some multicultural literacy across the district, and providing, obviously, learning opportunities for parents, for teachers, for staff. So that's kind of what we talked about. So in September, I met with Nanisha and Lisa and Doug, and we talked about, how are we going to do this? These are our big goals, so how does this happen? So we talked about the diversity committee. And we said perhaps this is a really great place where we could start doing those things. But at the same time, again, it's a lot of people, a lot of goals. So, how do we manage that? So we talked about perhaps creating subcommittees in the diversity committee. So obviously, each subcommittee is one of the goals. So we came up with a hiring practices subcommittee, incidence of bias, and professional development. So those are our 3 subcommittees. We meet 4 times a year, and we've met twice already. We have 2 more meetings, and you're all more than welcome to come join us. We meet at 7:15 a.m., so we are very dedicated individuals. And we are time on task because we start work at 8:15. So we've got an hour to get everything done. So please come if you feel like this is something you want to get involved in. In terms of representation, we have Board of Ed members, administrators from each building. We have teachers, PTSA members, SEPTA members, RISE members, and members of the Race Matters Committee. So we have a nice, broad group of people who are coming. In terms of the subcommittee, so I'm just going to share a little bit about what each subcommittee is doing right now. So in terms of the hiring practices, we have Lynn Walker and the administrators who are running this particular committee. And the biggest goal is to start casting a wider net. So we've been talking a lot about the idea of whenever we're hiring for positions, we basically look at the same places. We'll look at OLAS or friends or maybe community members, which is great. But at the same time, we want to start looking at other places. And we talked about perhaps making connections with today's students, tomorrow's teachers, or the Black Teacher Caucus. We have Teachers College right 20 minutes away. We have Bank Street College. There's no reason why we can't reach out. So these are things that we were talking about. We also talked about in terms of where we're looking for people. So New York, we can be advertising in the New York Times, different places, just to kind of reach out and then figure out where we can get different representation. I'm sorry. We've also been talking a little bit about implicit bias in the district, and we talked about how sometimes implicit bias can come to play when we're hiring. So it's important for us to start thinking about, you know, how can we lessen that a little bit? So we talked about perhaps, and I know the middle school administrators have been working with nameless resumes, just to kind of put the bias a little bit out of it, and they've done some phone interviews. So that, again, to just kind of get rid of not seeing the person. And we've been talking a lot about what are the next steps. So, you know, how can we kind of take this practice and make it district-wide? And again, where are we going? How do we want our educators to represent the district? What are we looking for? So this is kind of what we've been talking about. In terms of the incidence of bias protocol. So we had, I think Jesse Merchant and Tesfa Stewart are the great leaders, and we had a little bit of a problem because we had one version of the incidence of bias, then there was another version, but we've straightened it out. We know which version we have, and we're working on that. Jesse and Tesfa were very clear that this bias protocol was very much student-driven, which we love. We are looking at it being a resource for district employees, a resource for children in the district. And we talked a lot about if we are going to implement this bias protocol, we need professional development. We can't say to a student that there was some sort of microaggressions and the student doesn't know what a microaggression is. So it's really important for us to start talking about professional development if we decide and when we decide to implement this protocol. In terms of professional development, so we've been very lucky to have a great connection with RISE, and RISE has been working a lot with diversity. And I had an opportunity to meet Diane Goodman, who was working with RISE, and she was lovely, and we got great feedback from Hastings RISE. And we decided to have Diane come in and present to our middle school faculty at the time, and we figured, let's see how it goes, and she was fabulous. She really did a great job. Teachers were very happy, and I passed out for you feedback from middle school teachers, and that was direct info that we asked the questions, and I just copied and pasted it. So it went so well that Lou at the high school said, I want her to come, and Amy at the elementary school said she wanted to come, and then there was a big fight because Gail wants her too. So we figured out a way that she's going to go work at the high school in the morning, and any middle school teachers who did not get her the first time will get her now when she's in the high school. She's going to do sort of an abbreviated version for the middle school, and then she's going to work at Hillside in the afternoon. So we're trying to get continuity across the district so that we all at least have had the training on implicit bias. And we've talked a lot about perhaps what does that mean for our board? What does that mean for our community? You know, is this somebody that we want to bring so that everyone kind of has the same sort of training so we all know what we're all talking about? So something to think about. So she's coming back on March 22nd. Another thing we've been talking about, and I think Doug and I talked a little bit about this, we're looking at professional development for next year. So again, as I said before, we have Teachers College, 20 minutes away. And I happen to go to school there. So I spoke to some of the professors and I said, you know, we have a really great school district. And I think it's really important for us to kind of support our teachers with some really great top-notch professional development. And they agreed. So we had a really great conversation about perhaps creating kind of like what Hastings High School did with Family University and Teachers College does with Social Justice Saturday, where we have kind of a speaker in the morning. We'd have different workshops for teachers to choose from because teachers want choice. And then at the end, we'd kind of end it up together. So the goal for next year is to kind of get all of this settled so that we can, I'm not sure when we have PD days next year, so we have to start looking at the calendar. And it would be great if I got that like ASAP whenever you do it, because I have the professors asking me because they need to put it on their calendars. So just something to think about moving forward. In terms of multicultural literacy, so we have Hairspray, which has been a really great opportunity for our district. I think there were a lot of questions about how is this going to work and how can we use this opportunity for education in some way. So again, met with RISE, we've met with PTSA, we've met with so many different constituencies, and we came up with a few ideas in terms of education. So we talked about perhaps a Meet the Cast, which is going to happen on February 2nd at 1 o'clock. And at that point, the director is going to come out after the play and have the students kind of sit out and just talk about the experience. What was it like, and what have you learned from this experience? Just to give this, give an opportunity for the children and for the community to talk. Our second idea was to come up with a talking and thinking guide, which you have in front of you. It's in yellow. And we worked on this pretty much all weekend, trying to figure out how to get it done, because it actually needed to be done today because it's going into the playbill. So we finally got everything approved, and it's a great opportunity for parents, for teachers, for students to kind of watch the play and think about it through different lenses. So that's where. So you'll see that, and we.
Janice, if I may
sure.
interject here, I got an email from Gerard Marciano. And he says that he would like to share this with the board, that he had received an amazing email, he writes, from the writers, the authors of Hairspray. And they write, Dear Gerard and Lori, as the writers of Hairspray, we couldn't be more thrilled about your upcoming production. From what we've read and seen in the media, and the production truly embraces the fundamental truth of inclusion that is the foundation of our story. We are extremely proud of you and your students. Please send them our very best wishes. And that's signed, Keep the Beat, Scott and Mark.
Mark is maybe going to come. I was in the original production of Hairspray, so I'm getting a little bit.
Oh.
I was in Hairspray? Yesterday, and I'm trying to see here.
That's awesome. Thank you.
But it's, I'm actually I in the email thread, I've written this. But you guys have no idea what it means to those of us who originated it and the writers especially, that this is the result of what we did 60 years ago.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And for equity, we talked a lot about the importance of bringing our students to KIP. So we are going to have a presentation at KIP as well. Yay. You know what? I'll get the date. I don't know what it is yet. I know Gerard and the principal are kind of working that out, but it's been decided it's going to happen. And we've also talked about Farragut Middle School Teacher Club. So we talked about literacy, and Carolyn Denton and I attended the People of Color Conference not last year, the year before. And at that conference, we learned a lot about teacher book clubs and different types of books that teachers can read together. So we presented that to the middle school staff, and Jill Ochacher, who's our science teacher, said, you know what, I really want to learn more about diversity. I really want to have conversations with other teachers who are interested. And before you know it, we had 10 middle school teachers who came together to form this book club, and these are the books they've read. They've read Waking Up White, they've read Blind Spot, The Hidden Biases of Good People, they've read Americana, they've read Piecing Me Together, which the student book club read as well. And we are now reading Becoming. We just got that yesterday, so everyone's really excited about it. And this is all sponsored by the
It's really great when you listen to it, because
really?
she reads it.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'll have to get that. And
you have funding for the books?
The Race Matters Committee has been funding the books, yes. So we've been taking care of that. And then the Courageous Conversations classes are going really, really well. Last year we had a 6th grade book club. Well, this year's our 7th grade book club. These are the kids who are in the club. Chris Keogh, myself, and Dr. Price Dennis from Columbia, we started this together because after the quarter was over, what a lot of kids kept saying to us is, that's it? We won't talk about race anymore? I mean, just when they're getting used to it, you know, because it takes a while to get used to having these conversations, and then just when they're comfortable, the quarter's over. So Deetra just said, you know, why don't we start a book club? And that's kind of how it started, and before you know it, we have kids who come to see us during their lunch period, lunch and recess. So the Race Matters Committee, we purchase pizza and water for them, and they come in, and it's kind of a, you know, a relaxing atmosphere, and we just talk about books, and we talk about race, and we talk about gender, we talk about different types of identities, depending on, you know, whatever it is that they want to talk about, that, you know, in terms of the book. So we've read The Night Diary, we read Piece of Me Together, and right now we're reading Midnight Without a Moon. And we have kids that sometimes cycle into the program, so they may come for Piece of Me Together, and then they'll say they want a break, and then they come back for Midnight Without a Moon, which is totally fine. We just let them know, okay, we're going to start a new book, whatever, for whatever the reason is. So there's no pressure on anyone. Sure.
Just in case it's put by anybody, Vera Navani's book, The
Yes.
Night Diary, received the Newbery Honor Award.
It's today. I knew she was going to get it. It's so good. I kept telling her, Vera, you're going to win so much, and she's just winning everything. It's so good. Yes.
And Vera is going to be part of an author's presentation February 10th at the Dobbs-Ferry Library, which River Arts is presenting, and she'll be speaking along with 2 other Southeast Asian writers, all YA. Kids are welcome to come, grown-ups are welcome to come. Obviously, there'll be books, there'll be signings, so, and Vera is our featured speaker. We're really excited.
Awesome. In terms of, I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the work that the kids do. So in this particular lesson or activity, we put quotes from the book that we thought, you know, would resonate with the students, and we also gave them paper so they can write quotes that they thought were important. And there's a few of them that stood out, but one that stood out the most to me was in the book, Jade Butler. She's a poor young girl, and she goes to mentoring maybe twice a month. And when she's there, they have a spread out, all of this food. So Jade comes in and she sees the food, and she's, you know, a little embarrassed, but she does pick up the food and she eats. And then she realizes that she might not have food later. And she starts looking around and she says, no one's eating the food. So she has a little bag and she kind of packs a little food so that later on she'd be able to eat. And one of the students put a post-it and said, I've seen people do that before, and I always thought they were just being greedy. And this gave me a different perspective of what, you know, could really be happening. And that's what this is all about. It's all about perspective. It's all about opening children's minds to seeing the world not through the lens that they live in, but through a lens that other people live in as well. So I thought that was a really great opportunity for us. So the 6th graders heard that we had a 7th grade book club. So they said, Ms. Mateo, this is totally unfair. And yeah, it's unfair. You're right, but we don't have that much time, but we figured it out. So we decided to read Fred Korematsu Speaks Up, because they came to visit us last year. And I actually kept in touch with Laura Atkins, and I said to her, Laura, the kids are reading, you know, Fred Korematsu. Do you think you'd be able to meet with them? And she said, sure. So we set up, I think, next Friday, where we're going to have kind of a FaceTime with her. She was so thrilled that the kids are reading her book that she sent them for free copies of her new book, Biddy Mason Speaks Up. So each child got a copy of Biddy Mason, hot off the press. It was just released like last week. So it's a great opportunity for them, and I'm excited to see what happens. I can't tell you much about it because we literally just started. Hillside has a diverse books committee. I'm not on the committee like all of the time, but I do come in and I provide support. But I kind of have a really big multicultural book collection. So I bring books in whenever Amy or anybody in the committee wants books on a particular topic. So I help them with that. Amy did have Tony Smith-Thompson come in to speak to the faculty from the New York Civil Liberties Union. And like I said before, I share some diverse books with them. She has monthly themes now. So let's say one month is about science, so I'll go through my books and start trying to find books that have science themes. And it's the same thing with history and art. Culture shock. So I have nothing to do with culture shock, but I really feel like they need a shout out. They are an awesome group of kids, and if you go on their website, and I had to quote it, they are an accepting group of students who are working together to show the community how much stronger we are when we are united because we believe there is unity in diversity. They're just awesome. They've been working together for 4 years. They host a culture shock performance, which they did for us in the high school, I recall seeing last year. And their new culture shock date is March 15th at 7 p.m. So I wanted to give a shout out to them and to Christina Gagliardi, who's the teacher advisor.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Is graduating this year. Is there a succession plan in place to keep that going? That woman is a force. She's going to leave, and I'm worried that culture shock might leave with her. Is there some kind of plan?
We're all worried. And I know that we have been talking a lot about, and I did have a conversation with Christina about that, and we've been talking a lot about how do we get more children involved in this program, but I think you're right. I think that's something we need to seriously talk about.
That's the last chance. March 15th is the last chance you're going to get to show any younger kids what that thing is.
That's true. That's true.
I've been kind of berating Teresa about it for 2 years. I say, I get you're like 16 years old, but you got to come into the
I just want to go to college, right?
I'm really worried about it.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most amazing things I've seen grow up.
Yeah.
Student body.
Yes.
My children have gone through the school system.
Yeah, they're great. Oh, by the way, they're selling shirts for $22. So if you're interested, please contact Christina. It's a really good quality shirt too. But yes, I definitely think we need to think about what happens next with that group. And I'll let Christina know as well. In terms of the Race Matters Committee, some of the work that we've been working on, so we had the Alvin Ailey dancers come to present to our students, and it was fabulous. And I never, ever, ever get a seat in the front. Somehow I got a front row seat to this one. And it was, if there was a time to get a front row seat, this was the time. The performances were amazing. The MC was fabulous, and it was very much centered around education and how Alvin Ailey and the dance and just the performance itself, how they focus on social justice issues. And it was like, the more he talked about it and the more we saw them performing, the more you could actually see exactly what it is that they were talking about. So it was pretty amazing. And when you have a bunch of middle school students watching and literally dancing in their seats because they taught us a dance, you've got a pretty good presentation here. So it was wonderful, wonderful experience for everyone. Of course, we have our multicultural book fair. Whoop, whoop. Very excited. We have 3 parts to the multicultural book fair. We have the art competition, we have the author visits, and we have the book fair. In terms of the art competition, my colleague, Sarah Walters, runs the art competition piece, and she works with the art department. Our theme this year is Diversity Creates Dimension in Our World. So we've given that prompt to all of the art teachers, and we're hoping that we'll get some great artwork like we always do. And submissions have to be received by Wednesday, March 27th. And these are just some different pieces of art that were submitted by students before. In terms of our authors, so these were our visiting authors the first year. We had Elizabeth Zunan, Vera Hiranandani, Ed Young, Marco Antonio Rodriguez, Eric Velasquez, Sheila Chari, Raul Colon, Calvin Ramsey, Nina Jaffe. That was our year 1. Year 2, we had Lisa Klein Ransom, Janet Wong, Sylvia Bardell, who also offered a poetry workshop for teachers. So that was a first for us as well. E.B. Lewis, again, Vera came back for her new book. Jewel Parker Rhodes, which was amazing. June Archer and Patty Kim. And this year, I'm pleased to announce our authors for 2019. We have John Parra, who actually also created the artwork for stamps. So if you want to get John Parra stamps, they're forever stamps too. Melissa Iwai is also going to be here. We have Jerry Kraft, who works with graphic novels, Dr. Zetta Elliott, who's going to be working with our high school students, and Tracy Baptiste, who's going to be working with middle school students. So these are our authors this year. And I have gotten calls from past authors who just want to come back, which is really exciting. Our book dates this year, we run Wednesday, May 28th, Thursday, May 29th, and Friday, May 30th. We're going to be in the library right here. So this is, but as you notice, Saturday is not here. That's because I've been working with Marie Louise Miller and Jackie Weitzman, and we're looking for Saturday to become a Hastings Multicultural Book Festival. What does that mean? We don't know yet. We know it means food. We know it means music. We know it means books. We know it means community. And we know it means perhaps expanding a little bit more outside of Hastings. Maybe it becomes a Rivertown thing, but we own it. So we're really excited about this. We're going to be working this week. We'll meet up so that we can start planning the weekend. So I can't tell you much about it. I could just tell you it's going to be great.
That's the weekend that they do music?
Yes, it is. Yes.
The weekend that what?
Not the jazz, the River Arts Music Festival.
The River Arts Music Festival that weekend.
Yes. So we're hoping that, yeah. We also decided this year, since the community has been so wonderful and we've been selling tons of books, we started a Race Matters Committee scholarship. And the scholarship is going to be given to graduating high school seniors and middle school students. And we are giving them to promote, students who promote students who promote interaction among diverse cultural groups within the Hastings-on-Hudson School District. We're looking for students who reach outside of the school community to advocate for equity and social justice, and working to build awareness and engaging in courageous conversations regarding issues of diversity. So this is the criteria for the scholarship. In terms of sharing our work, so in October, Chris Keogh and I presented at BOCES. Just kind of, there's been a lot of questioning about, well, what are you doing in Hastings? What's going on over there? We're hearing a lot of stuff about diversity. Why don't you come to present at BOCES? So we did do that. And we've got tons of calls from schools who want to do the work that we're doing. The only problem is that they're looking for a manual. And I don't think they understand that there is no manual, right? So this is kind of stuff that you have to really work and do. We have to do the work, and I know you're nodding your heads. You know what I'm talking about. In November, I went to Houston, Texas, and I presented our multicultural book fair and the stuff that we're doing here at NCTE, National Council of Teachers of English. I presented 2 Children's Books Awards. I'm actually a committee member on the Jane Addams Children's Book Award, so I presented on that. And then the second one, Finding Our Voices One Story at a Time, was actually using multicultural literature to have students create voice and choice and asking questions and, again, viewing the world through different lenses. I was also asked to participate in Fordham University's cable show called Focus on Education. It was nerve-wracking, but it was a great experience. You can see it online if you're interested. I have submitted some proposals for different conferences. We're waiting to hear back, so hopefully there'll be more interest in our work so we can kind of spread the word out. I'm hoping that people will start to look at us as the leaders that we are and start to do the work themselves. In terms of next steps, so where do we go from here? So we talked a lot about professional development. I think this is our biggest goal. We have to really start thinking about, where are we going? How are we doing this? Do our teachers understand what these things are? And we're talking about professional development for all members of the community. We're talking community members, students, teachers, custodians, kitchen staff, board members, everyone, so that we're all kind of in this together, creating this community of learners. We've talked a lot about new hires. So now we've done all of this work, and then we get a new hire. So now they don't have the background that we've worked on. So we talked a little bit about, I know that the new teachers come in the summer. So we'd love to kind of talk to you about maybe we need another day that is just focused on diversity for the new hires, just so that they understand what it is that we're doing and where we're going. In terms of hiring practices, we want to continue to cast a wider net. We want to continue reviewing our procedures. We want to perhaps maybe start talking about maybe some guidelines. What is it that we want to do so that district-wide we kind of have the same ideas, and maybe even create questions that would be asked in all 3 buildings, and perhaps have those kind of discussions. And then if we're going to seek diverse candidates, we need to start thinking about how we're going to retain those candidates, right? Because there are some people who are concerned about working here, and we're a great community, but we also need to understand that if we're not doing the things that are going to keep these great teachers here, then we have another problem on our hands. So it's just something for us to start thinking about. Our incidence of bias protocol, we're hoping to get it vetted. We're hoping to implement that. And again, professional development. We also need to start creating our 3rd installment of Courageous Conversations. So that's something that probably will happen this summer. We also need to include Courageous Conversations district-wide, because what I am discovering in my classes is, for the most part, when I say to them, and I ask this every quarter, when did you first realize that race matters? And 9 times out of 10, the student will say, when I was in 3rd grade, at Hillside, and somebody said something to my friend who's whatever you want to say, and it made him or her feel bad. So this is right? It's happening way before they even get to us. So we need to start thinking about how do we start bringing that education down into the elementary school. There's been a lot of talk about affinity groups. So this is something that I think would be new for us, something that a lot of us don't know anything about. I know very little about it, so I would need professional development as well on this. But I think it's something for us to start thinking about, for children to kind of be able to get together and to talk about what it feels like to be a brown person in this particular setting. So these are things to think about. We've also talked about restorative justice. So how are children being disciplined, right? So we want to, if we're creating this community, then it's important for children to understand that when when there's an issue in the community, it hurts the whole community, right? So how do we bring this child back into the community so that everyone is kind of healed? We'd like to talk about a district survey. Where are we in terms of diversity? Kind of some sort of assessment so we could start measuring our goals, and we could start having, figuring out where we want to go next. We want to continue trying to create an inclusive environment for all children. We do not have a clear vision of diversity and inclusion, so that's something that we certainly want to really start thinking about soon. I just want to put a plug in. I'm teaching a class with Carolyn Denton. Farragut Middle School is having evening classrooms, so we're going to have a Courageous Conversations Confronting Colorblindness Wednesday, April 10th at 6:30. And there was something that I should have added here that I thought of afterwards, but Ross Abrams is the editor of The Buzzer, and the next edition is going to be all on race, issues of race. So that's going to be interesting. In terms of the position that I'm in now, right now this is a release of .2. It's 40 minutes a day. I promise you I do more than 40 minutes a day on this. And the stipend covers 60 hours. I promise you the 60 hours are done. they've been done, so something for us to really consider. I did request, and as Maureen said earlier, I did ask if this could be a full-time position, but I still want to teach Courageous Conversations, so it would be .8 release so that I can teach Courageous Conversations. But right now, we've discussed a release time of .6, which is 120 minutes per day, and we will continue to keep the stipend. So just something to think about. And that's it. That's who we are. Questions? I know it's late, so.
Board? Yeah,
Oh,
board.
sure.
This is the board.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry, this one. I'm like, hey.
Just, Janice, thank you. And I think you were very humble in explaining a lot of what you do, because there are no other schools doing this, and you are pioneering this work. There is no roadmap. It's a passion of yours, and we are so lucky to have someone with your expertise, your knowledge, and your passion about the subject, and bringing it to us, not only as a board, but to our children. So I think you were extremely humble in talking about the great things that you're doing, and I thank you for giving us just a taste of it. But you are really pioneering this work for not just us, but districts to emulate. And it's amazing, because when we think of even just books and the reason why we bring books to our children, we want them to be like those mirrors and windows that we've talked about so many times, but you're actually doing that, and you're taking it to a whole new level. So thank you for that work that you're doing.
Janice, I'm going to echo some of what Nanisha said, because she and I both have the pleasure of serving with you on the Diversity Committee, and I will be very brief. But the point that I was going to make is that you do put in so much more time than what you're being compensated for. I mean, a great example, you started off this meeting talking about the letter that we wrote from the board at the recommendation of the Diversity Committee, and you and I were on the phone for a good couple hours on a Sunday afternoon 2 weeks ago, and you weren't getting compensated. So you do so much above and beyond. And the other thing I was going to say, and I always say this to you after every meeting, you run a great meeting. And that's not an easy thing to do. Look at us. We can never keep a meeting to an hour, okay? You get everything done within an hour, and I think that's part of what you bring to all your other work too. You just get it. You know how to target, and you know how to get the job done, which is something that we could all use. I just think you're outstanding. The quantity that you have done here is incredible. And as Nanisha said, you are pioneering this position, and even taking on incidents of bias. From all my research, I find universities that have that sort of thing, but I do not find a public school, maybe an independent school. So you're taking on everything. So, sorry, I said I'd be brief. I wasn't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janice. I have one quick comment, just mainly for the board also, is that one of the goals that you mentioned was moving toward restorative justice approach to our code of conduct, and I wanted the board to know that NYSBA, the New York School Board Association, has recommended that we change the language in our code of conduct and include a Dignity Act coordinator to our code of conduct, and these are state the coordinator statement is actually a requirement, and the language of restorative justice approach to the code of conduct is a recommendation, and that the policy committee is going to be looking at that this week.
Awesome.
Next week. This week, Thursday.
Oh, it's Thursday, 4 o'clock is policy? Okay, and that's open to the public as well.
So, hey, does anyone?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, let me just thank you. You know, it's quite impressive, and I appreciate the degree to which you integrate yourself with the kids, you know, with 6th grade book club and 7th grade book club. I do have one specific question, which is, what is your thinking right now around affinity groups? You know, in some of the material that I've seen stuff where affinity groups are tabled. I feel like it's an older topic. I know as a student 30 years ago, I grew up with affinity groups. Somehow affinity groups became sort of out of vogue. What's the current thinking around that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't know a lot about affinity groups. That's something that I need to educate myself on. But from what I'm hearing, the research is kind of like gearing back toward affinity groups and the importance of kids really coming together and having a space to have these conversations. That's where the research is headed. Can I give you specifics? I really can't. I'd have to do a little more research and get back to you.
Yeah, I guess I don't have the research either, but I would like to see it just from, I know personal experience is never the best thing to go off of, but it can be very powerful. So,
and I think anything can go wrong if it's not done carefully, thoughtfully. Right? Anything can go bad.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us, if we are going to go that route, let's do the research. Let's see what works for this community, because what works for this community may not work for Ardsley, Dobbsbury, whatever.
Fair.
Right? Everything is contextual, and we have to do what's right for us.
And just to speak a little bit about affinity groups, colleagues that I have who do run affinity groups with their children, just to speak a little bit of what you're saying, it comes with a lot of training on first your own biases, and just doing that sort of uncomfortable work to then be able to lead children in really meaningful conversations regarding regarding white privilege, regarding the way that they perceive other people of color, and just having that safe space and building that community. There's a lot of work that goes into that first. So it is shown, and I know that the teachers who I know who run them say that they are so powerful and so rewarding for not only themselves as educators, but for their children as well. But it's definitely something that if we're going to invest in, as Janice said, that we really need to carefully and thoroughly invest, because it's not something that you can just throw together.
Yeah. I know private schools are definitely moving into the affinity group model.
Yeah, it was just a powerful way to know what opportunities existed and know what alumni existed that were doing different things.
Right.
It wasn't so much about, I mean, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Another time.
Yeah, and again, it's what works for us.
Right.
I'm so impressed with your thoughtfulness about this, and that you've taken this on and how much you've done. It's really in all different ways, you know.
But I haven't done it alone.
Okay,
It's a
I appreciate
community,
that
right?
too.
It's a
That's
community.
right. But you took you grabbed the bull by the horns and you really went with it. And I just want to ask, I'm guessing you're probably familiar with the book White Fragility.
Yes.
Because I've been in a sort of a reading book club at work, and that's been a very all-around diversity and inclusion, but that's been something that's been very helpful, I think, for people, and I think in this community, for everybody, not, I think, certainly for white people, but for people of any color, it's also really a good kind of jumping off point.
Maybe we have a community read.
Be interesting.
Yeah, this is great.
And actually, my son teaches at an independent school and does a lot of diversity work and diversity training, and they just started a teacher's book club reading White Fragility completely coincidentally. And then he texted me and told me that the teachers of color also wanted to read the book and do their own book club on it. It's great.
Denise, I just had one question regarding the book committee that you said you were on for Hillside. Is that open to the public, or is that just with administrators?
I believe it's just, I know Amy runs the committee, and then there are teachers involved, and I was asked to just kind of come in and support, the learning as much as I possibly can.
Now, are those for books to be integrated into the ELA curriculum, or just?
So, from what I understand, there are some books that are read books, so teachers will read those books to the children, and then there are books that are like bin books, I think she calls them, and then those books are books that are made available to the children so that they have access to them.
Great, thank you.
This is great. Thank you very much. I mean, the one thing I would say that comes across hardworking and your passion. I mean, I think one of the themes tonight has been about passion. And I think what we all know is passion motivates and inspires children. It engenders learning. It just creates so many positive things, and you embody it, and I really appreciate that. And I think the comments, I would echo what everyone has said. So we look forward to hearing more about these proposals and more that you're pushing forward.
Can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
With the Courageous Conversations concept, getting it down into 3rd and 4th grade, are you working with Amy to have the grade level teachers sort of working with you, because we're talking about you're talking about this third edition.
No, the third edition is for 8th grade, because right now 6th grade, 7th grade, then we do 8th grade.
Third edition with 8th grade, but now to get something that's into the elementary, call it 3-4. You know, they're not moving around for class, so it's got to come from their grade level teacher, which means the sort of grade level leader needs to work with you really to flesh out.
Or a co-teacher kind of situation.
Yeah. Have you started talking to Amy about what something like that would look like?
No, that's why I put it in the next steps, because honestly, there just isn't enough time in the day to do that.
Yeah, all right.
So that's something that we're looking for,
Okay.
moving forward.
I think you're spot on, right? Like, I think kids are talking about it. Something goes wrong in third grade. They're on the playground. Something goes wrong, right? So that's where they should hear about it, but it's going to be within the classroom teacher.
Yes.
And having a facility to do that. And many probably don't. So,
right. And the courses themselves are contextual as well, right? So what works for us may not work for another district. So we need to, there needs to be a lot of research done. So we need to kind of look at Hillside. So what does this look like? What would this mean for Hillside? What kind of lessons do we want to teach the children? There are a lot of questions that we need to think about before we even start writing lessons.
But it is such a great thing for middle school. It's like such a great middle school.
Yeah.
You know.
And hopefully it goes up, right? Because we have Ross's class, which is amazing, but it's one class, right? So we need to start thinking about how do we kind of diversify this so that it's like all over.
I took that class.
And I was going to say, there's a hunger for more because that class sells out, and people know
Every
I gotta
time.
get that before I graduate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get it till senior.
Okay. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Because you have to come to work tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I do.
And we have a lot more meeting to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are on 4A.
Oh, boy. And we're going to 13.
4A on our way to 13.
Hold on. Let's get organized.
Network security, how important is that to talk about?
The only thing I wanted to mention, so our internal auditor will start a cyber audit in about a month.
Great.
So they're all set. It was something that, with all of our work, I know the board was interested in looking at it last year. I think we continue to read of all these districts. So I think it is, and interestingly, when I spoke to the internal auditor, every single district is it's in a very similar spot, like many of our counterparts are doing it. So I think we'll be, hopefully they'll start in the next month or so. They have to make not only people here, but they get into BOCES, and that's the piece. That's
the RIC piece, the piece that was identified.
Yeah. So that's having the internal auditor is more or less then go and they spend maybe even a few days at a time at BOCES with the Regional Information Center, who is really the person who houses, that's where all of our backups and things are going to. So they really are kind of doing, going there on behalf of the district and really making sure that they have everything. And actually they were familiar with some of the concerns around some of those, some of their controls there. So,
thank you so much.
No problem.
I know I've been a pain in the neck.
No, it's fine. We did have a couple of proposals last year, and I don't know where. At one point, we kind of shifted gears, and then it was just a matter of again never having the time to bring them here. But I think we're all set now. So
we're back. Okay.
Again, it may not. It may take a month or two to get into the RIC, but it's in the works. It's in the works, and it'll definitely happen.
That's great.
They know they already engaged them, so we're good.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Again, we've got board goals on here, but I don't think it's worth focusing on those. Again, they're posted there.
Thank you.
For anyone to read. But let's go to business items. 5A, does anyone have questions about any of the business items?
One of them, I'm sorry, I never got a chance to make an attachment on the budget transfers for number 13, and that was really related. It was my fault. Jean asked me about I never got it to her. I think which number it is. There's something. No, right, but it's related to number 6, which is the cafeteria air conditioning proposal. I think we've been talking about the air conditioning proposal remember, as it related kind of to the bond, we had talked about it. I said the plan would be to use money within the cafeteria fund coupled with some general fund monies to get that work done. So you can table that for now, and we can hold off on executing the contract until
That's
the
okay.
next time. Yep.
So
mhm.
table the,
You're not going to table still let number
the
6 go, it
cafeteria?
doesn't matter. And then just table number 13, there is no attachment.
okay.
Okay.
And the other thing I was going to say, and,
Sure.
and we don't have to resolve this tonight.
Yep.
But the number 18, the communications development contract, I saw that was put in under executive content, but it doesn't have children's names.
What
or
was that
anything.
exactly?
I think it's our
I think it was by
agreement for
mistake,
service.
originally.
Didn't put, there's,
But I guess my question is, does it have to be, like,
I don't even know.
can we make it a public document? Can it be listed with the public documents? Because there was nothing.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
there was
sorry.
nothing private connected to it, as far as I
Oh.
could tell.
Oh, is this for the?
I think it's number 18.
I can tell you where it is.
I just want to look at what
No,
number 18
it
is.
under public content also. It just has a slightly different name to protect the student.
Oh,
who
fine.
is-
Okay.
So
No, as long as we're
under-
transparent about it,
right,
that's
so
fine.
on
Okay.
number 18, it says, communications development contract for educational services, and in the executive content, it says where those educational services are being provided.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I guess the one thing with the contracts we had talked about in terms of our special education, and I think it was brought up, because we have such a small community, sometimes if somebody knows, like, your child goes to a school, it's just to kind of protect.
Of course,
Yeah.
I didn't see that it identified.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even put two and two together that was.
The title of this, where we're sending the student to out of the name for the
Okay.
public content.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what are we doing?
We're tabling number 13, and that's it.
I'm realizing that I have a printout here, but my numbers, I don't have an 18. So it's a 1 through 18, but we remove 13.
We're tabling, there's nothing in 13, so, yeah, yep.
So 1 through 18 with the omission of 13, which isn't there anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So whether you approve it or not, there's nothing there.
Okay. And a second?
So who did?
Second?
Tim and Anisha?
Second. All in favor? Okay. I think that was everyone. Janine? Okay. And guys, I think what we're going to do, if it's okay with everyone, we'll try to move through all this and then just come back to some of the budget stuff to have some conversation about that. Okay. So 5B, placement for CSE and CPSE services.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. The addendum. This was the matter discussed in executive session. Do I have a motion to pass this, what's it called, stipulation of settlement?
So moved.
Second?
Second, and that's for year one.
Just 1 year.
That's in the, yeah, just 1 year. Yep. All in favor? Okay. All right. Personnel appointments. Does anybody have any questions about 6A?
What are the Schedule B? When I look at the Schedule B, how do I know what the new appointment is?
Are they highlighted? They're highlighted.
Just that one?
Let me look at my thing. Yeah, they should be highlighted. Yeah, they should be it should just be highlighted. So they're kind of using the same document. They highlighted per window.
It's just the blue one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that constituted highlighted.
Okay.
Okay.
Blue lighted.
Just those, all right, just those three.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Do I have a motion to pass the 6A appointments?
So moved.
A second? All in favor? Okay, retirements. Ken Jernigan. This was...
I vote no.
Well, that's a good idea. I think we should vote no. I think we should vote no.
And I will say, I know we could all go on, so maybe we should all hold off till we do a beautiful retirement.
Yeah,
service for
because
all.
something...
Well, I
right,
do
something
think
more
that,
formal.
no, I don't want to,
But no, I know, it's hard to, we all love
I don't know what
we
he'll
all
say
like-
here.
We love him to
I think there will be celebrations of him.
Yeah.
Yes, as there should be. And our other retiring, personnel.
So can I have a motion to accept Ken Jernigan's retirement?
I move to accept his retirement reluctantly.
Okay. Do I have a second to accept either reluctantly or otherwise?
We're just telling you no, that's it, we're not doing it.
Okay. All in favor, unfortunately.
I'm the reluctant.
Okay.
I'm not in favor.
box for me.
Okay. Minutes from January 7 and December 17th. Questions? I think, Lisa, maybe you had some questions?
Well, wait, now I'm confused. Janine, we
Wasn't
had a
there a different
discussion
one?
point on here to talk about what the minutes should look like, and it was on there 2 days ago, but now I don't see it.
No, it's there. It's
Under old business.
Okay, so here's my question with the minutes. I mean, I don't know if you want to have this discussion now or not, but they're too spare, in my opinion. I'm not saying they don't meet the legal limit, but they're meaningless. And I just think I've looked around. I've seen how the other river towns do their minutes. I've seen what Scarsdale does, and they're robust. So a 3-hour meeting, can yield, between 3 and 5 pages of minutes, and that's appropriate. And I know, I've heard people before say, well, whenever you transcribe them and summarize, you bring your own view. Well, yeah, that's what minutes are. So right now, our minutes, and this is no reflection on Janine, she's been ordered to do that, says, say for December 17th, a discussion was had about creating the position of assistant superintendent. You can't tell the outcome. But the outcome, was that, 6 of 7 people wanted that to happen. That should be in there, because it's meaningless otherwise. So the way the minutes are currently, I don't approve them. I think we're not being transparent in the way that I would like to see transparency. I think directing somebody to look at the video is not a practical solution. Our videos are too long. I mean, I'll put them on in the background while I'm cooking, but when my spouse was working, he would leave 8 in the morning and come home at 9. He couldn't do that. And you saw we had probably 200 people here tonight who want to know what we're doing. And you do that by meaningful, well-articulated minutes. So that's how I feel about them. I said that when I campaigned, and I believe that to my core now. It's about transparency, and meeting the legal limit, in my opinion, is just not good enough.
I have thoughts, but does anyone else want to share?
Where have we gone on this before in terms of capacity that you have available to? Do we need to just pay for full transcription? Right, like we've had this conversation before, right, where it was around.
Well, we didn't really. I thought we had decided to have something in between. I don't think we wanted full transcription, because that's as bad as watching a video. To have somebody, when the spouse comes home at 9 at night, here's your 200-page transcript. So I don't know if we reached an agreement. I don't recall.
No, it was left that, it really came down to full transcription, or, just really recording the motions, which is what's required, and then I was time stamping the videos when we did that. So if someone looks at the minutes, it gives them the hour, minute, and second mark to look at the video for that discussion.
Right.
Is it possible to put any more content in, Janine?
Hold on, I don't want to rehash this whole conversation. We've gone down this path. We had a long conversation at our August 6th meeting about this very topic. And I think at the time what we agreed was that Janine would try to summarize conversations into bullet points. My experience of that has been that that's a very hard thing to do, for a variety of reasons. One of which is just time. The other is there can be potential differences of opinions for what was said on different topics. There's also, for very long meetings, a potential for one thing to be emphasized more than another because of just sheer human processing of things. And so, to me, where we're left right now is I believe we have, I guess there really are 3 options. I think the first option is full transcription. I think the second option is the bare minimum legal limit, which is resolutions, motions, and votes. And then a third option is to figure out how to get more processed, for lack of a better term, notes that are, I think, informative to the reader. My personal opinion on that is it's not something to put on Janine's plate. So if that were going to be the solution, I think we would have to find a different way to do that. And I don't know
But Doug, isn't it also in with your options what Janine is doing, where she timestamps the video if somebody wants to go?
Well, that's the bare bones option.
Okay, that goes with it. Because it seems to me that, I don't know, given everything, particularly what we're talking about tonight, it wouldn't be a priority of mine to hire somebody to do that or pay someone. That's not how I'd want to spend money. If it's important, you could go to the video. I know it's not as easy, but when you're trying to think about how you balance things.
Just to respond, the video, the problem with the video is that you must have a computer and you must have internet access, and not all of our families do. So that's a problem. That's why the law requires minutes. The law does not let you rely on a video.
But how would those people have access to the minutes?
Well, it's because we could have printouts available of them. I also do want to respond to something that you said, that, you know, when you transcribe it, you know, when Janine figures out a way to say it, that other people may have differences of opinion. And that's why we create draft minutes that all of us review and then vote on. So it is looked at by 7 eyes who've sat through the whole meeting. So that's your safety net. And if there's a real issue, then we discuss it. Which there has been. Yeah, which there has been.
Yeah.
I think see, in my experience, that's theoretically, that works theoretically, but practically, it actually takes a lot more time than merely opening up the notes and reading them, because it requires someone to go back and remember what they were saying during that conversation, and if they can't quite remember, they've got to then go back and review the video on their own. And sometimes someone comes with a prepared statement, so it's very easy for them to remember. Sometimes someone is riffing off the cuff for 10 minutes and they don't really remember. They've got to go back. And I can tell you that in the middle of 1,000 things going on, I think that's very hard for people to do. I think that the reality is, you know, Janine has a lot on her plate, and for her to do that, you know, and Janine, this is not a knock on you. I think that it's a hard, very hard thing. I mean, I do that for a living for people. It's extremely hard to do, to listen to a very complex conversation where there's different points, back and forth, and then to summarize that in a way that's compelling.
I think you overrate the complexity of our meetings. I mean, Janine would say there was a discussion about whether to hire a superintendent, assistant soup. They said, but I will say, all the other boards seem to manage to do it and do it well. So I don't know why we think we can't.
The boards. I gave the board a poll of what other districts do, and actually most of them do the bare minimum. They don't do much.
Can I ask that? Would you want to take a cut at drafting minutes?
No.
And circulating them afterward?
No.
Right? Like.
No, but don't get me wrong, that's Janine's job. And if it's too much, then we can look for somebody else to do it. I mean, all the other boards manage to do this.
That was the third option.
It's part of what the law requires of us. And again, to me, it's all about good government. That was one of the first things I did when I got on this board. I said, the minutes are lousy. We're breaking the law. We didn't attach the documents. So that got fixed. But we need meaningful minutes. That's democracy. That's how people know what's going on. Again, we can do the bare minimum. I would object to it, but because I don't think it's right for our community. They care. So that's why I think, and asking me, should I do it? No. Do you want to do it? I had to ask you and Jeremy to do the finance committee meetings after I did them 3 times and nobody else volunteered. Okay, so I've done my share. But let's either see if Janine can do it. If not, then we'll figure out how to get it done if it's not within the amount of hours that Janine is allotted to us.
Go ahead.
I was just going to, I would suspect that someone without an internet connection is probably watching this video on television if they want to be informed about the Board of Ed meeting. One possibility to enhance the video is if there's a time that can be seen on the video. I don't know if that's possible, but so that if somebody has a paper minute and they can't really see it, they can at least see a time. Sometimes you can video with the timer. I don't know if that's potentially possible. If you wanted to coordinate it that way, but I'm for having the bare minimums with the timestamps, because I really truly believe that it can't be done. I've done a lot of participant observation and a lot of minute taking of classrooms, of teachers' meetings, and you can't really create them without a lot of training, without your bias. And it's something that takes a lot of training to get. And to say that one opinion has more weight than another, sometimes it's just the length of time that people talk about one opinion, but it's not the prevailing opinion. So I think that if you have just the timestamp and what was discussed, that needs to be what we offer the community.
You know, Lisa, I very much appreciate what you're saying, and the part of you that really wants to make sure that we're being transparent and communicate. But I think given all of this, I mean, and even what Lauren's saying in terms of bias, it just seems that first of all, there are a lot of people who actually watch the board meetings because they say, they come and tell you. And if it's important that there's an issue they want to see, it's available, and then they actually see it. It's not through a translation or a third party and I just think in terms of being practical, this way we do what we need to do legally and should be doing, but we make it's available.
Again, to me, it's asking our community members to jump through hoops. So if somebody looked at December 17th and saw a discussion was had about whether to create the position of assistant soup of curriculum, and they're thinking, oh, I want to know the answer because now you're talking about cutting music and you're talking about creating this fancy, pricey position. Oh, I have to watch like 15 minutes of discussion to figure out what happened. Instead, there could have just been a line, and 6 of 7 people decided that we should do it. It's a burden on our community.
Isn't that what we do?
That's not what it. No, that's not what it says right now because that was the direction.
So if you look at the video, it's actually up for interpretation if 6 of 7 people did do that. That's actually because Lisa, I have a recollection of that meeting of 7 people agreed to hire assistant superintendent of curriculum. I don't know what everyone else recollects. So when I heard that you reached out to Janine to ask for an articulation in the minutes that 6 people were for the position, 1 was against, that didn't even match my recollection of the meeting.
So did you go back and look at the meeting?
No, I didn't go back and look at the meeting.
But this is why we have draft minutes, because I knew what I said. I support the position, but not this year. I said I support hiring a director, and if that person does well, giving that person a promotion either the next year or the following year. That means I did not support an assistant superintendent, and I said because we're floating a very expensive bond, and I didn't even know about this potential to cut these other program and staff, so it's very obvious, but that's why you have draft minutes, and that's why I alerted Janine. And then Janine looked, and she heard what I said, and then we had a discussion with Stephanie, and it got down to this meeting.
But that's why I think it's important to just leave it as a video so people can interpret it on their own.
It is so clear. I just disagree. Look, if your way, if the will of the board is to have it just be the bare minimum and have people look at the video, then we don't have to waste time.
I would agree with Lauren. I facilitate meetings for a living, and I very often have to capture 30 or 40 people in a room saying complex things, and that has taken me like 15 or 20 years to learn how to do that in a way that's representative of what's going on in the room. I think if we were all a board where we all just kind of we have some very differing, complex points of view that have nuance to them on this board, and I think it's almost impossible to capture that nuance in a set of, for someone, and I apologize, Janine, you're not trained to do that, right? And so I think it has created an immense amount of consternation on a weekly basis because every time we go to the minutes, there is some sort of challenge or discussion about what, and we've got to go and dig in and figure out. So I'm not saying that whatever that challenge or that disagreement there wasn't important. I think it was, but I think we should let the video stand to represent that as opposed to trying to create another layer, a processed layer on top of that. That I think there is a professional who could do that. I don't think we have that professional, and I don't know that we want to pay for that professional. And I feel that the value of the minutes right now is best left at video minutes.
Since we are not the people who obviously benefit from the minutes because we have all physically been here because this is the job that we chose to pursue and come on our free time, is there any way that we can even just reach out to the community and see what they're looking for minutes? Are these things that people generally look to? Do they look to the video? I feel like we're having a conversation without being best informed on what works. Like, because the whole purpose of the minutes is so that people who are not here can know what we're talking about. We are obviously all here, and we're talking about really good things like Janine can't be stretched too thin. Do we want to bring in another person? But do we even need to have that conversation yet if that's not something, like if 80% of our community comes out and says, you know what, I've never opened the minutes, then this conversation, you know, I just feel
that's
like...
fine. Do you want to take on that process?
I don't know how I would, but if we think can tell me who I should be working on with, then I will take that on. But
And I'll do it with you, because tonight people were saying, how do we communicate with you? I'd happily put the question out. We could do it at the next board meeting, say we're discussing this. We'd love you to write to us and let us
This is going to
know.
have financial implications, okay? So it's either $6,000 for transcription, or we're going to have to hire another resource to do this, okay?
Or it may be, Janine is doing them now. It may just be different instructions to Janine, or maybe working through it. Yeah,
I don't.
maybe sending her
As a
training.
professional who does this for a living, I will offer my professional opinion here that I don't believe that is the smartest way to go.
Why don't I ask the boards, because I have board mates on high-profile boards on, some of the top schools around here. Why don't I ask my friend on the Scarsdale board and my friend on the Irvington board how they do it and how they train their person who does it?
Okay. Fine.
Okay, cool.
Okay, next. So we still have to approve the minutes from January 7 and December 17th. So all in favor of approving those minutes?
Okay, I
Do
just
get a
have to
motion
say,
to
I
approve
still have an issue with December 17th because it doesn't give an outcome. So I'm going to vote no on
You
that.
just have to abstain or vote.
give a what, Lisa?
It doesn't give an outcome on it. Oh, we're also out of compliance, by the way, because there's no minutes, there's no draft minutes posted for January 4th, and that was a meeting, since it was a quorum where we discussed business, and the law requires that minutes be posted, but within 14 days, even if they're marked draft. So we have to make sure those get up there.
Okay.
What was?
January The 4th.
January 4th.
January 4th.
What was the January 4th?
That was the bond forum. But it was a quorum, and we were discussing business, so it's an open meeting, and the law requires that you have minutes.
Okay, so I'll add, let's look at January 4th. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 7th?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Jody and Lauren.
Okay.
I'll abstain. Janine? Abstention.
Yep, I'm sorry, I was just looking at January 4th and what there was for minutes, and it was just the opening and adjournment of the meeting.
I didn't see
So-
anything posted when I
It
looked.
says-
Maybe it was yesterday I looked?
It's up on the board docs right now?
I'm looking at board docs, but I can't see the same view, so maybe they weren't released.
Anyway,
All right,
as I said, when I
let's just-
checked within the
I'll
last...
double
So let's just get those on for the next meeting, because they don't say anything.
Show on the road.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
what was the vote on the 7th?
I think, let's just do,
yes and one abstention.
No, but who?
Jody and Lauren.
Okay.
What was that?
You motioned to approve, and
And
she was just...
December 17th?
okay, so, no, we haven't done that yet. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from December 17th? Do I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And I'm going to abstain. That one is, the bareness is difficult, because I've had people ask me, they said, I loved your statement about the bond, and but it's not in the minutes, so they've actually asked me to send it to them,
The only
which
way
I've
we would
done.
solve that is if we went to transcription. That one I'm very...
No, but Doug, no, I sent Janine a summary as well.
So personally, I'll share my personal opinion on this. I'm extremely against that.
You mean
Because
against having
I'm
people's
against people
personal
sending-
comments?
I'm against people reading something verbatim and then sending it in, because it privileges that comment over someone who took 7 or 8 minutes to say something, but they didn't have it written down.
But what
So
I
if we
did
went that way,
afterwards-
I would only go full transcription of the entire meeting.
Doug, I'm sorry, I feel like I've said this 3 times. I sent it to Janine, and then she responded, and then I sent her a summary of it. And what's troubling to people who've been asking me, they're saying, why isn't the board
printing what you said about the bond. You were a dissenting voice, and why isn't the bond, why isn't the
board's
board
not printing it because
making
the
your...
board doesn't print minutes to meetings. Should we make that decision and transcribe meetings, that they would have that? People come up to me and ask me what I say. They don't have my written comments either.
But it doesn't even say anything about what I said. Again, we should be, if you read Dobbs Ferry, if you read Ardsley, if you read Irvington, Scarsdale, it'll say, board member X said this, board member Y said this. And that's what a summary is for. It takes what you say and it squishes it down.
Well, I would just say, let me just interject one thing. So there have been many meetings where we have done it that way and it's never been an issue. Where it's become an issue is when the meetings go on for 3 hours and 2 hours on one specific topic, and that becomes almost impossible to summarize.
Right.
But when the conversation is bouncing back and forth between all the board members, so it's hard to try to put together.
And bias enters a 3-hour conversation always, because at some point, whoever was really articulate at 1 hour and 22 gets their comment, and it's just more in people's minds, and somehow that's represented more, where if you went and watched the whole thing, as an outsider, you may decide a different point was the most important point. I think that Lauren's point about bias being, it is such a prevalent problem in summations of things that I feel, especially given that this board has a variety of strong, different, nuanced opinions on different topics, I just personally think it's a bad idea. So,
wait, Doug, with all due respect, I do disagree. I think the fact that we all review and have to ratify them takes care of that. But that's okay. I'm in the minority.
I disagree. Okay.
So is there an outcome as to what you
Well,
want to
I'm
do
going to
in
reach
minutes?
out. We said that at the next meeting we'll put out to the public and ask for them for their feedback, and then I'm going to reach out as well to some boards of schools that are on our level or better than us to see what they do.
Because what we can do, if you want to poll the community, is we could send out a survey.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
Or you use constant contact.
I think if we're going to poll the community, it has to be the whole community and not just people reaching out to people that they know to be in touch with us.
But again, you're not reaching the people who don't have an internet connection.
That's right.
So, I mean, the same kinds of biases that you're talking about.
Well, what we could do, since we are, I'd love to be able to do the full community, but we can do it through the school. Oh, yeah, and I was going to say, and the school has ways to reach the families that don't have internet. I know that. The school's aware of who they are.
I just have to say that the focus on the conveyance of personal opinions and convictions is not settling well with me. And I hope that we can move on to the next part of business in our agenda.
So let's move on to committee report. Finance, I believe that the minutes are there. I think that they've been covered in conversations already today, especially in the budget presentation. I don't know if
Wait, Doug, I actually had one question about them.
Okay.
I was just going to ask Tim. I think this was in your minutes. I'm not sure which ones. I can't remember which ones you did and which ones Jeremy did. Sure. But there was one thing I didn't understand. I want to ask. It said that we discussed that property taxes would need to rise by $1,100,000 or 2.78% to balance the budget to offset lower state aid. Were you saying, because I had thought we were talking about a zero. Are you saying that, am I misunderstanding that we're going to have a 2.7?
The levy, the actual dollars raised, goes up by 2.78. So you always separate out the tax rate.
So wait, when you said
you
said property taxes have to raise by 2.78.
So the property tax levy.
Or maybe just put the word levy in there.
Levy.
Insert the word levy.
No, okay, because when I saw that, I was like, whoa, that's not what we're talking about. Okay, so let's...
It's just levy. So yeah, I'll give it to
Let's add the word levy. Okay, because I
read it so quick that, I didn't think about it.
No. It's dollars versus...
So that was an error. Let's add the word levy. Thank you.
So that's under E. I'll give it to Jean, and it'll probably reflect it.
That's a very big difference.
Why, thank you.
Excellent finance committee notes.
You felt like you were there.
Okay, so the diversity, that was the intention, by the way, to feel like you're there.
I was glad that I didn't have to be there.
But wasn't there
because I got your notes.
No, the 16th.
I think the diversity committee.
Diversity report.
We'll do it later. I'll do it later.
Did we go through that?
We went through that, yeah.
Great, okay.
But I will say, I want to thank the board for approving the letter that we wrote with the diversity committee. I was really pleased with it, and I got some great feedback on it. So
I thought it was a
glad the
great
board
letter.
approved that.
Thank you for that.
And thank you, Nanisha. It was really an effort of Nanisha, Janice, Karen Hammerness. It was great.
Okay, sexual harassment policy, old business.
Yeah, that's just there for a second read, so if there are concerns about the required changes that are in that and that have already been vetted by our council, you can bring them to the policy committee on Thursday, and if not, then this will be up for a vote next meeting.
Okay. So I'd like to just open up the conversation about budget for a little bit. I'd like to risk opening the conversation about budget for a little bit. I don't know if we want to maybe agree on a time frame that we'd like to have this conversation. 15 or 20 minutes. It's very late already, but maybe we're... I think it's important.
It's important. It's important.
So let's just see where we go. Before we do that, the public, does the public have any comments that they would like to make? This, we do have a second public comment, and if you had something you wanted to share now instead of waiting until after we spoke about the budget.
No. It's good. It's good. It was good.
Right. No, it's good.
And I thought your comments were great.
Very complicated thing, Maureen. You have my undying admiration and respect for what you're dealing with, and you're going to be dealing with a lot more of it. You heard what everybody has to say. How you feel about it. I don't want to spend the night anymore, but it's sticking around. I'm so impressed by what you guys are doing. The message crossing up in how the public responded to you tonight, but I think they actually are.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And may I thank you, because I know you really kept talking about keeping the heat down and working together, and I think that feeling was in the room.
Do kind of respect.
The one thing I would like to ask is that as you are making your budget decisions, and you have until April, finding the right candidate to replace Ken is not something that can wait until April. We are in competition with other districts around the country, even in other parts of the world, to attract top people. And so it would be really imperative to not hamstring anybody from putting out the job availability notice, and I guess there's a legal aspect to that, but whatever it is, let's find a way that we can get word out that we will possibly have a position open, someone who can be doing that process.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. So, okay, so does anyone want to kick off? I guess a question I have, and maybe to help frame it, Maureen, you can talk a little bit about some of the reductions, because I think that's where, some of the, obviously we heard a lot from music reduction tonight. There was some comments around FLES reduction, and then the one that I think maybe some of us are less familiar with are the implications of the kindergarten aid reduction. And maybe you could just share some of the conversations either the Finance Committee or you and Amy have been having.
Sure. I mean, and again, just, I don't know if I had said this before, nothing on this list was anything that anyone even wants to see on this list. Every, I mean, even with the aids, I mean, the amount of time, and we still were actually talking about it earlier today as we're trying to find ways, and some of the administrators scaled back some of their requests in order to kind of just try to find ways to fit things in. So the FLES, again, like Lisa had mentioned, we had talked about it in Finance Committee, and part of it was twofold. I think it is something that has been underfunded for the last few years for, I can't remember when we reduced to the one or what even the, it may have been fiscal at that time, or may have been trying to fit something else in, or whatever the rationale was for that time. But I think there's a concern. I think it was twofold. So we're obviously looking for budget reductions, but at the same time, we're saying if we can't properly fund it, should we put it on? And again, with the space issue, and I think that also, that coupled with some of the budgetary concerns, the idea was to put it potentially, have it on this list for consideration. I know that Tim, at the time, and I think it's kind of reflected on the slide, the idea would be that if we were to do that, there would be a commitment to looking at it once space became available, and then also if there are opportunity to properly fund it. But I know people are always concerned because when you get rid of something, you say you're going to bring it back. I get that, and I think we all understand that that sometimes doesn't happen, right? So, but again, that was just one area, I think, because of the fact it's not properly funded, it was one of those areas that came up for a potential reduction. I think we looked at class sizes. I mean, just other conversations. We looked at the current first grade cohort. Should we reduce that a section? That's right now a little bit on the low side. So there are a couple other things in the mix also that can be, again, looked at. I think the kindergarten aides, again, very concerned about the impact that'll have on the little ones in that classroom, and the aides do really support that. So this would be a reduction of staff so that somehow they would be shared aides, right? So at different parts of the day.
This would be shared aides?
Shared aides, yes, shared aides.
Half day?
About half a day, yeah.
And I think you had mentioned.
Also do lunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other river towns are using a half-day model?
Yeah. I mean, Irvington has always had a half a day model. I mean, as long as, I mean, I can tell you as far as definitely they have a half a day model. I think I'd have to ask about Dobbs. I mean, overall they don't have as many aides and teacher assistants as we have. I mean, we know that. I can't speak to exactly why. I mean, I think the reflection of the teacher assistants being reduced under the district. Currently, all of our ICT classrooms have a full-time teacher assistant in them. I'm not sure what the practice is, but I'm pretty confident that in many districts that's not the case. I know it's not the case in Dobbs because I spoke to my colleague, and in Irvington either. This right now actually still would allow for teacher assistants. So in the kindergarten, where there would be a removal of the kindergarten aide potentially, the idea would be in those ICT classrooms, though, they would have a full-time teacher assistant because that's a bit different. The other classes would be sharing them across the board, and to Nanish's point, they also do all of our lunch coverages. We do have monitors, but again, just with the need with the 128s and again, aides and assistants also have lunches, so trying to ensure that there's appropriate coverage. Over the last few years with security concerns and security analysis we've done, we've really beefed up the coverage of having different personnel out because you have 40 kids on the front of the Hillside Playground. Having 3 aides out there is not really safe. So, all of these, this is sort of what we felt is at the most, and every cut, all of the teacher assistants and teacher aide cuts, I can tell you the principals have some big concerns about that because I think these are the kids, I think the kindergarten aides, I think we can manage, but then coupled with some of the reductions in teacher assistants, we're getting a little close to being uncomfortable. I think we have a good plan for kindergarten. We love what we have, but I think we'll make it work. I think that's why it's on this list. I think people feel we can make it work. But the teacher assistants also be a change in what we have, and we value them as well. On the resource room at Hillside, there are children that are in there, but again, the numbers of kids, so again, that was just a decision that in order to prioritize or try to make some hard choices in terms of staffing, they felt they could do that.
Why is the music 1.0 160,000?
So Ken with music. Well, Ken's obviously a very senior teacher, right? And his salary plus his benefits exceeds that. But in retirement, you still pay a person's health insurance, right? So this would be the net if we didn't savings of like his salary less his benefits, or what the savings would be.
We're not going to hire someone at his level.
But even if you were, don't forget that's
his pay level.
Okay, but you would hire a new person would need health insurance, right? So even if you were to pay a person $100,000, it would be close to like 150, which is fine. I mean, I think the board, as we know, you have some options here. I think what we wanted to just ensure is that everything is really important, and it's really hard, and we do have some room under the cap, and that may be something that the board may want to, if it's something that, just based upon what you're hearing, I know you all have your own personal thoughts on it, if that's a direction you want us to either restore or back off. But as we know, there are going to be other hard conversations, whether it be FLES, whether it be the that fourth grade, I know there may be some parents, I saw reactions when I said that tonight, and people were like, "What, they're not," over on the other side, because I think people have kids in that grade.
Reactions were what they
Well, I think when I said we don't have money currently slated for that
section to be moved to the seventh.
said, I saw, again, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're talking about something else, but it seemed as though they were like, oh, like, I think everyone knows there's a lot of different needs.
Can we just play like a scenario out here? Let's just say we decided to fill the music position.
Yep.
Play that out. That's adding 160 and just bumping up, and we're essentially now 40,000 away from the tax cap at that point.
Well, you really need
opportunities for other reductions.
Well, there's always opportunities for other reductions, but I hope you know that the principals, if it was here, it was not done easily. It wasn't because Ken is irreplaceable. We all know that, and I think there is a tremendous concern around music.
Can I sort of direct the conversation?
Yep.
In a way to help try to get to your answer. I don't know if you can pull back up.
Yeah, I don't know why
budget
this
presentation.
went out. This thing went out again.
A way to go about this conversation is we have on page, I don't know what page this is it page 4 where we start in any case, excuse me, you have the budget proposals under consideration. So we have a very defined list of items that have been developed in consultation with the building leaders to discuss. So if we are looking at adding back to fund the music position, if we're looking to adding back to fund FLES, the natural place to begin the conversation is around these other budget proposals under consideration.
Right.
Also, Maureen, just in looking at some of the things from the Finance Committee, I know a bulk of our budget does go to the special ed. So I know we had briefly mentioned at the bond any conversations regarding those ICT classes, if they were a way to move teachers so that it's not necessarily adding more hires. Were we able to have any of those conversations? Because even just looking at the numbers, I know we want to do what's best for kids because that's what we do. We service families. We're in the service of people. And I feel like a lot of times that conversation gets lost when talking about 0.4 aides here and not to spiral too much off topic, but we're talking about half-day aides in kindergarten, which, like, to me, as a teacher, that's earth-shattering.
No, I know, and that's the way they feel.
And I don't even know if we all understand the magnitude of what having an extra body with 5-year-olds means to education, because that's where they learn how to play and how to take turns, and it's already so academically driven. But not to get off my soapbox for a minute on that, in terms of our ICT classes, have we really looked at how many we need per each grade? Because as I'm looking at those numbers, it just seems that if we sort of collapse sections, because right now I know we're working in like 23, 24, 25 kids per section, 3rd and 4th grade. Like, have we talked about that at all? Because I know that's what we're running this year.
On the ICT numbers, yeah. So, I mean, that's why I provided the charts, because one of the, because of being a small district and having small class sizes, 1 or 2 kids in the ICT classes, right? But I do want to say, and again, I would defer, of course, to Laura and Amy to speak more about it. I think there was definitely the numbers, and then there's definitely, I think we talked, like, kids, right? Like, there's different behind the numbers, right?
Absolutely.
There's reasons. So, I mean, if you look at that, and I did play myself in the chart, like moving a child. I mean, if you collapse one of the sections, and then those percentages get kind of get off cue. I mean, honestly, I think if it, I don't want to. I've heard some of this. I think if you were to kick it back to them, they'd be more inclined to reduce a section in 1st grade and keep the ICT.
Okay, I just
because
feel
they
like
think
it's a
that's more
conversation
important. I
worth
think
having.
that just inherent like that would be. But again, a 1st grade. So 1st grade currently has 6 sections. It has about 110 kids. Again, they would like to keep it at that because they feel that
it's still 20 kids.
It's still 20 kids a class. But I know that there was that the ICT numbers as were presented they felt very important to fund. Now, there's on the second chart, on the 1920 chart, you'll see I've highlighted 2 of the class sections and put like a few notes there that the 2nd grade could potentially only need 1. We'll have more I mean, I don't know when that information will exactly come, because as you know, there's meetings and, different things that have to occur. And some of these kids either may not be currently in ICT, wherever, how this section is moving. So the fifth grade, it's really based on if some of those kids go to special class. It depends on how all that kind of pans out also. So there's kind of two potentials for the possibility of not needing one or the other. So, or I guess possibly the both. But right now we're planning on just having that staff there. There is a possibility that one of these either becomes, we may not need to say we could reduce a 0.6 at the fifth grade, or the second grade we don't end up needing to do. So I think there is a little bit of a.
And I know we've also talked about, we've also talked about looking at different models of what that classroom support actually means in terms of special education, general education, and terms like that. So I would hope that conversation is one that we're going to continue to have.
Well, I think you had mentioned that, and you had said that it probably would take a full year though. I mean, I don't know, because you were mentioning how in RC you guys do it a little bit differently, and I think that would be something. Obviously, you want to get all the special, like the department chairs, especially because I know obviously this is when we were talking about this at Hillside at one day, well, we were talking about it in terms of space, and then we got onto this, about a lot of the special ed teachers there seem to be aware of this need, and, that some of the class size. So, again, this is a reflection of what it was the proposal that they felt we needed to add staff here. It may turn out that you need one less.
Yeah.
That would leave you a little bit of flexibility.
I mean, does this come out of the data that comes from the annual reviews, the IEPs? But is there a calendar for that so that we can know for certain when those decisions are going to be made?
It's April.
Yeah.
Actually, in the past, though, they haven't been done by budget time, and then
we've
we
had
get
to add people
data,
after,
which has been very frustrating. Although now, frankly, that the staff is so large, can we find it? Can Laura report to us and get us the data before we have to finalize a budget? Because it's really awful after you have a budget passed to learn that you need 3 new staff members.
If we're looking at these 2 particular grade levels, perhaps she can prioritize them in the calendaring of the IEP meetings so that we can make a decision.
I think, well, just not to say that those weren't great ideas, because I do think that is important, but just in terms of, respect for what goes into those meetings and all the testing that has to happen.
I'll definitely get a timeline just to see how.
April is usually.
Is it the end of April, Nanish?
End of March, early April is usually when all my CSEs happen. And
but to Lisa's point, I think that's where we've had to cut the other way. We've played it more conservative, and then we're like short 2 teachers or 3. So we've had the wherewithal in the budget because we've had a little bit more cushion. Now we just happen to have a couple things. We get a little less state aid. We're trying to pull ourselves off reserve. So the ability to kind of handle multiple positions would be difficult. One position we could probably play with, I think.
And just in response, I've been trying to think out of the box a little bit on where there's other efficiencies. And I know you and I worked really beautifully on the out-of-district busing efficiencies, because I do feel very committed to keeping our music program where it is. And I love the idea, that Nora Bertacci and I were discussing, to preserve FLES, try to make it effective in grades 3 or 4. So I'm going to throw out a bunch, and don't respond to them now, okay? These are just possible ideas. Let's stop buying Chromebooks for kids. Let them buy their own. I've never felt good that the district provided my daughter with a Chromebook at the expense of somebody on a fixed income. Our technology budget is very large. It's over $1 million. I appreciate that you reduced it. But here's the thought. I speak to preschool parents, and we talk about the idea of piloting a screen-free classroom, perhaps in kindergarten or in several grades in the early elementary. Smartboard is, whatever, $5,000 to $7,000 a pop. If we say we wound up, and parents would opt in, and there was a lot of excitement around this, maybe we could cut down on our smartboard purchases and our smartboard maintenance. Board of Ed, I've said this year after year, our NYSBA membership, we don't use it. We don't go to conferences. We have to pay extra for the policy. That's $16,000. Maybe we want to talk about whether to give that up. Copiers, $200,000. Can we reduce that? District mailing, $20,000. Maybe people in the September can check a box. I don't want any mailings. Maybe we can save $10,000 there. New superintendent is coming. We don't know where that person's going to fall. Do they need life insurance or an annuity? They may not. You know, and these are just some of the ideas that I was thinking of. More on the out-of-district busing. We can push again so that we can start using bus stops rather than the door-to-door limousine service.
That's one that I really think we need to, because that is like a big...
It's a big one, because we're giving those students better service than our current students who are in district. And I think the other districts, I know they haven't been quick to respond, but they're all going to be having these same exact
Well, I
discussions.
agree with you. I think we've been, as I've mentioned, and I think it actually serves us well, because I agree. I actually, as much as people saw a lot of people come and say, I like it. You know, I think it's great that people are giving the board feedback, because that really is how you come to the budget that's the right budget for all, right? You want that. So, but to your point, I think we're out a little bit ahead of our colleagues, and as they're grappling with some of their budgets, maybe there would be more of a willingness to look at the busing.
So anyway, that's there maybe. I also just have another question. It's not related to this. You know, Tim, you were saying if the bond fails, then, one option, which Deb King corrected you on, is, using operating budget to pay. There are other options.
Just to be clear, what my point was, is what happens in the budgeting process is if you don't have the bond, right, and it's not a question of a guarantee that something, what happens is if you don't have that money for capital expenses and something comes up, by no means is it if it doesn't pass, it's the, sky is falling. It's that you lose operational flexibility. So if a boiler goes and it's in excess of what we have in capital reserves, that it has to be paid for, right? So it just reduces the operational flexibility of the operating budget.
I wanted to ask the flip side to that, because I was looking at our current debt service, because the debt service is part of the operating budget as well. I know it doesn't factor into the cap, but it's still money that our community members have to pay. So it looks like our current debt service is a little over $800,000. I am guessing that should the bond pass, that debt service is going to rise to over $2 million. Do you think that's about right?
Yeah, that's right, because the state aid comes in on the revenue portion of the budget. So we have to budget for the actual payment and the...
So the cost to taxpayers in the annual budget then will be somewhere probably, when you factor in state aid, say between $1 million and $2 million?
Anyway, I guess you're talking about the new bond, right?
Yeah, because I think it's important
I think it's
to
a net
recognize-
number. Yeah, it's a net number of about $1 million or something.
Yeah, so that would be added to the 800,000.
Correct.
It's important to recognize that will be in our. That's the flip side. That will be in our budget, not counted against the TAP, but counted against when you write your check what it's going.
But I
for.
do think, to Tim's point, and again, not that I agree. Like it's that wasn't the point with it, but I think his point about, and I think this actually you had raised this a couple years ago in terms of like doing the bond, because I think in terms of. I know you understand that I'm saying just the bond in general, like last year. It is kind of good that we are doing the bond, whatever the bond is. There are things in the bond that if we did not do, and you remember how we talked about, were we being too conservative and not doing it and putting too much through the operational budget? So I think,
bonding for repairs is awesome.
Oh yeah, and I'm really hopeful, and I think I made it, I don't know if I said it to who, but I said it to somebody. I mean, if in fact, if the bond does in fact pass, I'm hoping that in the next year or two we'll see an operational savings in the operations and maintenance budget, because even at this point, I mean, and that's another area we can go back and look at as well in terms of coming back to the board the next time with an updated budget. Because Joe and I had talked about there's many jobs, as you can see, around the district will put funds to X amount of dollars per year. I had talked to Joe about, maybe next year we tighten up the buildings and grounds budget. We just don't do. I mean, I think it's fine. Like some of the flooring, we can maybe take $50,000 out of that. I'm just talking about for next year. I mean, again, those are requests that come from the building level. I think there was some I had seen. If I go back to people and say, can we put this off a couple years? I'm sure people will work together to figure it out, so we can even tighten that up, but we can only tighten it up so much because we do have to have money for like emergencies and things. So
Sorry, before I forget, and forgive me for jumping around, it's been a long night. Back to FLES and the discussion with Nora Bertacci. Sure. Should I ask Nora to write something up and send it to us? Because she also had a way to help with fifth grade language, with a certification to help diversify. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. I'll ask her to write something short and sweet.
No, the one thing, and I think she probably mentioned to you, which is still included in the budget, I know Nora, again, that's what she communicated, that the support for the middle school students was really important to her.
Because we were discussing it, because she was saying it may be able to help offset the cost of the Hillside Spanish teacher,
by doing, there was a different training, and I'm not going to be able to speak, intelligently about it, a different training that could be given to the world language teachers that would help them be able to diversify their instruction.
Oh, okay. Oh, you mean instead of having the position?
Instead, but let's have her write it
Okay,
up.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, we only have right now a .5 slated for that position because it wouldn't have been in all the sections of Spanish. It would only be the
I
fifth
don't know
and
what the
sixth.
cost of the certification.
And we had like $60,000, for the budget.
Has been wanting for a while.
Okay, so you're saying it would be training and no staff?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the special education staff that you had proposed to
Just in
work
terms
with.
of process, should those recommendations go back to the building leaders and not to Maureen, just because the building leaders were the ones that made the educational decision-making about potentially cutting the program?
And I think it's hard. I mean, again, I don't want it to say, oh yeah, they were giving it up. I think it's just so hard because I know they were at Hillside, and as an example, I think the ICT, we had asked them to prioritize it. So it's just, it's tough. No one wants to cut anything. Well, not prioritize. I think we were looking for savings, and that came up because we knew it was kind of underfunded. And I think even a couple of years ago there was a discussion to add to it. I think that's probably something that.
Is there any scope for? And this, again, it's a building leader question, but is there any scope for department head release time?
What do you mean? They get
Yeah,
release time.
I guess that's contractual, right? That's in their contract.
It's contractual.
Yeah, so we
For
can't.
what exactly?
Each department head has two.
No, I know, but what I'm saying.
No, my question is whether, it's a non-negotiable at this time. We're looking for areas, right? where
I
we-
understand.
yeah.
I think they all get .2 release time.
They get .2 release time, but I guess the point is, my question is that a non-negotiable, right?
That
Because
is a
because we're looking for, it's in the contract.
So it's not in the it's actually.
It's Schedule B.
It's actually, it's in the contract because, I don't know, did we add the language or something? It had never been there, but we had a past practice in doing it.
Yeah.
That's how I don't even know if it's actually in the contract.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, you can't take it away because it still would be a violation of the contract.
I think it was an understanding.
It was understanding.
It wasn't written, it was simply
Right.
an understanding.
No, since I've been here, they've been getting it, and that's a long time, so. But I think at this point, if we didn't memorialize it, it's the same whether it's written or not at this point.
I guess here's the one thing I say for the board to consider, and you don't have to answer, no one has to answer this now. Lisa's points on things like NYSBA membership, they're all good points, and they all add to collectively small amounts of money that in sum add up. We're also looking at a 1920 and then 2021 and a sustainable budget with 80% that doesn't have a lot of flex to it, right? We have a contract that's going to last for another 3 years, this year and the next 2. So then the question that I'm really driving at is, and again, no one needs to answer this now, but we have program proposals for each building. And if you have questions on those individual pieces that you want to relay to Maureen, that Maureen relays back to the building leaders to say how important, the building leaders, the principals and assistant principals are just as aware as we are of the number of people that turned out here for music. So clearly, they've learned as well as we've learned the sort of community-wide importance. They may have a different opinion now themselves as to, what, in lieu of music, I would look to this. But similarly, if anyone here has it, so, for example, E&L, in increasing E&L staffing in the high school. Like we've talked a little bit about it in Finance Committee. It's important. It's also narrow. So now recognizing, is this something that Lou, in his professional opinion, would weigh?
Well, I don't know if you noticed since the last meeting, I want to say just, and I briefly glossed over it earlier, but both the middle school and high school today did pull back about $50,000, I think, toward the music pot, in other words. So I think that was a reflection of the understanding of how can we reduce some areas, and again, to kind of try to put money back on the table, for lack of better
Also,
words.
to quickly comment on the E&L, that by each child that walks in and is classified as a child who needs E&L, that is a legal mandate. So there
but what's in there, Nanisha? We are proposing just extra, which I think is necessary. Yeah.
But I know, like right now, we are tight, and we are exactly providing the state legal mandates because there are a certain amount of minutes that are legally mandated for each child based on where they fall in the spectrum of classification as ENL. So that's like not really
And we're at
a
that mandate.
negotiable.
We're at that.
because,
we're at
No,
that-
I
for
agree.
example,
Yeah.
we had to approve tonight
Point 2.
point 2 of ENL because one child walked in the door and their legal minutes. So-
We're at that mandate now, correct?
And yes.
And
We
this is-
are.
and then this is above and beyond.
Yes.
So what's in here right now is above and beyond.
So what would you see for the proposal next year, the increase? That would be above. But to be honest with you, from what Janice, when I spoke to her, we've always had a little, well, not always, but at times we've had between a point, and again, that's not unusual, that's in every department. Typically, there's a 0.2 or 0.4, because, again, there's a few teachers, and either they're pretty close to being fully scheduled, and then other times it just goes down a bit, and when they've had those down a bit, they push in to, like, the classroom.
Right.
So, I mean, they're always working.
No,
but,
of course.
But what happened this year, because of the, we were tight, right? And actually, we had this happen twice this year. They had like a 0.2, I think, well, it was.
We had her twice.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we also, but in addition, that's why it's a 0.6, we had also a 0.2 requested for additional push-in for next year. So that 0.6 is really 0.2. It's for important things, but it's not mandated.
I was just wondering, because I was under the impression that that was to meet the mandated services.
No, definitely not. But the 0.2 of that 0.6 is, but the other 0.4 would be, and again, but to Janice's point, she said, but they would still have the flexibility, then if somebody did walk in, they wouldn't be constantly scrambling to get a 0.2. So it serves two purposes. It services the kids as they need it, and then if there's a child they need to pick up, or because even sometimes to test the child, to have somebody they didn't have anybody. They're really tight. Like, so that one, I think, now that may not, in a couple years from now, maybe they say, okay, we need 0.2, maybe there's a touch of flexibility, but I kind of think this, the size of our district, we're somewhere always, we probably just have to keep it at some.
Which person is that additional resource?
Chadia, Madeira.
No, but which one in this proposal? Is
No,
the
it was on today's.
No, the 0.2 was, but the extra one, I mean.
No, it's really a 0.6. If you go to the high school, it's a 0.6.
It's the 0.6 of the high school.
Yeah. Doug? 0.6, 72,000.
72, okay. I guess a question that I have is there a world in which whatever budget proposal we get to,
I just want to say this isn't bad. To me, this is like easy. There's people that like grapple with $2 million holes in their budget. So, I think it's.
So thank you.
No. I don't mean it like anything to do with me, but I think we've had boards that have done a good job managing it. So I look at this when I have colleagues that are like, I'm $8 million, and like huge amounts in the hole. We're like just tinkering here.
And Maureen, you've been amazing, because I was just reading how Irvington, between 2009 and 2013, laid off 39 staff positions, including 20 teachers, and eliminated 19 high school electives, and we haven't had to do that. So thank you.
No problem. And that's where I think it is just, it's always important for us to go through it and make decisions. And sometimes, even though some things seem like, tiny, like even Lisa said, like, I am kind of like, listen, if you can tighten up places that you should, it does help. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but catching like money here and there.
How much have you already saved in the busing? I think 200,000 already
Yeah.
from, I mean, that's huge. And if we can get bus stops, I think we're looking at six figures there.
Right. So it is definitely important. So I think we're in a good spot from a budget, and you're well ahead of the game, and you now have a couple items that you want to follow up on. You have someone under the tax cap. We can go back and do some more, I mean, I don't know if you want to do something on music or where you are at,
Well,
but
yeah,
we can
so
look at more
this
flex,
is
get more
what-
information.
I mean, I guess the question that I would pose to board members is there a scenario in which you could imagine not hiring another music person?
Another music person?
Another music person?
No.
So why don't we just agree right now that we're going to figure out in whatever way we can that we're going to hire someone to
It actually
fill.
is easier for us because it's like easier for us to go back now and have time than to be like trying to.
That's a great idea.
Really
Let's take a
important
vote.
because when we also keep saying, well, nothing's decided till April 17th, you know, as a practical matter, that's not really true. You know, the night before you defend your thesis, you're not rewriting chapter
right.
1.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we
yeah.
really are making these decisions.
Right. I mean, but certainly that's why it's good instead of, we usually do a budget presentation in February, having this early on. By the time you see it in February, you'll see what you're telling us tonight.
So could we
reflected.
even post it pending budget approval like we
Yeah,
do for
sure,
some of those
sure.
things so
Mhm.
that we can
Yeah.
start casting? Because I know a lot of districts have already started, you know, posting on OLAS pending budget approval.
I think the question at this point is.
Well, I have a question. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead,
Tim.
go
I have a
ahead.
question about that. I mean, do we need budget? Because the position exists, so it's not like it's pending
No,
budget.
we could, I mean, but obviously, if we weren't going to fill it, like, there would have, you know, been a reason not to put it out there, but I do think you need to, obviously, I think what we're suggesting then is we go up to the cap limit.
Well,
if we restore the
maybe,
position.
maybe or maybe not. I mean, that's a different set of questions, right? Because we still don't know.
But it guides you.
Yeah, I think it's.
Maureen needs the answer to be able to do her work.
Well, but what do you mean, though?
Well, I think if the music is sort of like, I mean, I think right now you're 213 under the cap limit, and as much as I feel like, I just, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's some rationale for like also because if you leave that money on the table, like it's just going to make keeping things in the future harder. So if it's just for that one, because just in case there's anything else that could come up, you know, we can definitely still look for budget savings.
But
I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying is maybe we do also think about either levying some more of the cap, because again, as we talked about tonight, honestly, if I'm even like thinking about trying to have, like if we could finagle like hiring, like cutting one less aide, you know, so there's many other things that have to, like if we can kind of make a decision to use some of the cap money to fund the music position, because there will be other things that may come up, and again, if there's other items.
And there may be other things that come off, too.
Correct.
Right. So,
Right.
because I think, you know, some of those ICT
Sure.
positions.
Oh, that's true. We do have
you know,
that.
there-
Well, in
there's.
kindergarten, we don't know what enrollment's going to be for
Well, that's what I've always said.
Well,
If you end up
and
with
on
5
the upside,
sections,
we
you
don't know
have-
if there's a 7th section, a 3rd, 4th grade either, so, right, so there's.
That we just
Yeah.
won't know.
Yeah,
for
and I think that's why, as much as we don't have that money factored in for either of those scenarios, but, you know, there's a strong reality that you might not need one of those. I shouldn't say for sure, because now it'll probably go the opposite for me, and we'll need another one. But I think I do like the idea of, and we don't have to make any decisions tonight, but maybe the next time we can either show a scenario where it's the levy cap, like we go up to the levy cap, or we don't go to levy cap, and then we offer you some other potential reductions that hopefully aren't as controversial. No, but I think we can come up with different. I think we should still look to tighten it up, to your point, because I think and then there may be, as I'll speak to Laura to see whether we can get some better information, or not better information, to know what the timeline is for those two. And she did give me that, like that's why they're highlighted. Those were the two that when we went back, it looked a little.
But I do think that you're quite right, Doug, that resolving this whole music thing sooner than later would be really critical. It'll buy a lot of, you know, appreciation. I think it's clear tonight that you don't want to be fooling around with that. And let's just clear the air and move in that direction. And then also, the point was so well made tonight, that you do have to get out into the job market sooner than later. So let's not kid ourselves. We can look at all the other possibilities and do that. We've got weeks to do that, but you don't want to delay on this other.
Yep. Okay, so it sounds like we're in agreement that we'll move forward with posting a position, and we will figure out a way to get that music position in the budget. Okay. Can we, I think we've got more conversation to go, but does this feel like a good stopping point for tonight? Okay. Yes. So with that, are there any Board of Ed comments? I think we've had our comments. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?